everyone, and welcome back to Knights of Last Call. I am joined today by the man, the myth, the legend himself, the resident barbarian expert, if you will, of the Knights of Last.
Someone else must have been invited.
It's Bob. Bob, hey, how the hell are you doing, Bob?
I'm ready to rage and smash.
That's right, rage and smash. Welcome, everyone, to Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, and I am very, very happy tonight to have Bob on the stream with us. Bob, no kids. The wife's got the kids tonight.
Yeah, I mean, they're literally probably over there. So if you see me get a little ragey, it's because of that. No, yeah, no, they're just watching. The wife was pretty okay. She was funny because I told her I was going to be on the stream of Barbarians, and she asked if it was for my PC or like, does she think in real life, do I feel like I'm a barbarian? I was like, yes, exactly, both.
Exactly.
I wish I was a barbarian, and I play one in the games I play.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, so tonight is all about the Barbarian. Last week, we did a kind of a deep dive on the Rogue. We talked about some of the Rogue strengths, some of its weaknesses. There are not many, by the way. We had a tip goal. You all smashed that tip goal. So here we are. We're back again with another stream, this one about Barbarians. And if you like these Pathfinder 2 class discussions, feel free to throw some of your support in our tips. We've got a Stream Element tip in the description below. And if you head over to our Stream Elements tip page, you can support the channel, get your name on the stream, and we'll try to answer your question or at least acknowledge your awesome, cool message. You can also show some love for Bob. Throw him a super chat. We got our get Bob on these streams more often, so maybe I can bribe Bob or more like bribe Stacy.
That's right, my wife. Yeah,
into to getting Bob on here. So
now, if you guys don't like the Barbarian, you should make sure you're a member of our Discord so you can vote on what we talk about next or what Derek talks about next. I just jumped in because it's Barbarian.
That's true. So Bob, let's get into it. Let's talk about the Barbarian. So a couple things first. Number one, Bob, Barbarian was sort of your first character, but not
like
really.
I'm always like a ranger and Barbarian. Barbarian was my first character in 5e.
Yeah, in D&D, yes. You played a Barbarian. And then when we played 5e another time, which we called Dungeon Time Extreme, you were a
Barbarian again.
Then when we played Pathfinder 2nd Edition, Rise of the Rune Lords, you started off as an alchemist.
Well, we actually started playing Abomination Vaults, and I played a ranger.
No, I'm talking about your very first time playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition, Azius.
Oh, I didn't know. Oh, I guess we did start that, and then we took a. When did we start playing Abomination Vaults online? Was that during it?
No, much later. Yeah.
Okay, much later. Okay, yeah. So then I was Azius for the Barbarian first.
Right, but you were an alchemist. But you kept.
Yeah, I started as an alchemist.
But what you want to do is you're like, Derek, I want to drink these potions and then become like this big rage monster and then run into melee and smash people apart with my hammer. And I said, Bob, it sounds like you just want to be a barbarian. And you were like, yeah, pretty much. You're like, I was trying to play, not to type, but I can't help what I am.
I just want to do what I want to do. And well, it didn't help that the alchemist was kind of broken a little bit. So it didn't really work like I wanted it to.
Sure.
I still like the alchemist in theory.
Right. And now, originally, when we played Abomination Vaults, Torvald or Tormek was a ranger.
Yep.
And now Tormek
is a barbarian.
Is a barbarian.
The same thing happened. He had a spiritual awakening inside a dungeon.
That's exactly right.
A barbarian.
So we're gonna dive in now into the Pathfinder 2 Barbarian. We're gonna talk about we'll always start with its class features. We're gonna talk about its proficiency levels because I think those are important for us to get a baseline about the class. And then we'll talk about some of the different builds with it. And by that I mean the instincts that are available to the Barbarian, and we'll also kind of touch on some of the feats and some of the ideas behind the feats. And then we'll kind of get more into a discussion of like, what are some things that we might change about the Barbarian, or what are some things that we want to bring extra close and special attention to the Barbarian. But before we begin, I did this last time, and I got a comment or two that said that they enjoyed it. I want to talk about the history of the Barbarian.
I loved it. You talked about the history of the rogue thief, and I was like glued.
Yeah,
I'm like, tell me more.
Yeah. So the Barbarian as a class did not appear in the original first edition player's handbook. The Barbarian class did not appear until basically what was the first splat book, the original APG, if you will, which was called Unearthed Arcana. For those of you who have been a 5e fan for a long time, it's not just the clever name of their of their monthly article. The original book, written by Gary Gygax, just a few short years after he released first edition, was called Unearthed Arcana. And in Unearthed Arcana, they introduced a couple new classes, one of which was the Cavalier, which was a subclass of the Paladin that focused on riding a mount and being cool. And the other one was the Barbarian. And if anybody who knows Dungeons & Dragons knows that obviously one of the major influences to Dungeons & Dragons was Robert E. Howard's Conan the Barbarian. This was a huge influence. And so when Gary Gygax created this Unearthed Arcana and created this Barbarian class, that was his inspiration. And by that, I mean the Barbarian was a fucking superhero, okay? This class was broken as shit. For starters, it advanced in skill and proficiency and specialization at the same level of the fighter. It was better than the fighter in every possible way. It had D12 hit points. And if he was wearing less armor, his dexterity actually gave him double the AC bonus. So it was, but here's the crazy thing. I actually had to dig into the lore a little bit about this, and I'll get to this in a second. But the original Barbarian was very much based off of Conan the Barbarian. So what did that mean? Well, number one, meant barbarians could only be human. Number two, it meant that barbarians couldn't be a lawful alignment. And number three, it meant that barbarians were actually kind of savage, sneaky, wilderness skilled fighters. There was no rage mechanic at all, because Conan the Barbarian, being a barbarian, and this, we'll get into this, but at some point, Barbarian and Berserker kind of crossed, right? And like the idea that like a barbarian doesn't mean that you're a Berserker. A barbarian meant historically that you were from outside the Roman Empire, right? So the idea was that you were kind of from a more primitive culture, maybe a little bit more savage, living in the wilds or on the edges of civilization. So the original Barbarian, he got the ability back in first edition D&D, the ability to move through, hide and move silently, climb walls, leap far distances, move at great speeds through the wilderness. So the original Barbarian was actually more of like a skilled fighter, ranger, thief.
That's exactly what I kind of like.
Always
a ranger
with D12 hit points,
awesome.
And insane armor class. And so the original Barbarian was just this like incredibly awesome, skilled wilderness warrior. Now, that was the first edition Barbarian, came out on Unearthed Arcana. We go to second edition D&D, released in 1989. There is no more Barbarian. They got rid of it from the player's handbook. Now, it would make a return in players' handbook reference books, which were sort of like the second edition splat books. These are the red cover books. Right near the end of second edition, they released Player's Handbook reference number 14. So it was the 14th volume, which was called Barbarians. And they basically reintroduced the Barbarian class. But guess what? It was kind of the same thing as the first edition Barbarian class. Not as broken as it used to be, but it was still a wilderness warrior who was a skilled and savage fighter. There was no rage mechanic at all.
Now, real quick, you said it was based off Conan, the books or the movie?
Well, for the movies came out in the 80s, so I mean, the original one came out in the 70s, so definitely from the books.
Oh, from the books. Okay, that's what I was wondering. I was like, is this like Arnold? We love Arnold.
But the thing is even if you go back and watch those Conan the Barbarian movies, he doesn't really rage. He's not a berserker.
We watch it during, when we watch movie night.
Yeah, so
coming soon.
So the whole concept of barbarians raging doesn't really exist at all in D&D until.
But that's like a Thor blood rage, like North Viking thing, isn't it? Like,
well, again,
like a blood rage.
So Viking, Nordic culture had the idea, the legend of the quote unquote berserker. Which was the idea of a Nordic warrior who would work themselves up into this sort of frenzy, what they called berserking. I mean, it was like a literal term from the medieval time period. And these were supposed to be these undefeatable, raging warriors who were filled with the spirits of, and I'm sure there might be people who have a more historical accurate portrayal of it. But the fact of the matter is that didn't exist in D&D. There was a berserker kit for like one of the classes, but it was just a kit in second edition. And then all of a sudden in third edition, we get Rage. Hey, Quark, $5. Just jumping in to donate in memory of Azius. Now back to Blaze in the Dark. We'll watch the VOD later. Thank you, Quark. And yeah, let's, Bob, cheers to Azius.
Pour one out for your homeboy. He jumped in the pits.
Spoiler, Rob.
Yeah,
thank
spoiler.
You, so yeah, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they just decided that Barbarians rage. And they get damage reduction. And that got added in third edition D&D 3.0, year 2000. And now it's just a staple of the class.
It's interesting. It's almost like they should have kept it as like a path within there that they could take.
Now, what I thought was, and I had to check the dates on this, but you know, third edition D&D was started to get developed in like 98. In 2000 or 99, so same year as third edition came out, Diablo 2 released. And Diablo 2 had a Barbarian class, which basically had like these war cries, these kind of rage attacks. And I wonder if maybe there's a, you know, cross-pollination of ideas. If the people that were working at Blizzard North were talking with their friends in Renton about class design, and that's how you ended up. But honestly, I do not know how Barbarians ended up having this rage ability. Damien, $2, says, Azius is why I joined this personal money pit. Well, respect then to Azius. I think a lot of people joined because of Azius. That was our original, you know, our old school kind of kickoff, you know, and Azius was there from the beginning. So thank you, Damien. Thank you, Quark. So yeah, after third edition, though, honestly, the Barbarian hasn't changed much. Your third edition Barbarian, so this is what, 23 years old at this point, got Rage, which lowered their armor class, gave them more damage. They got a form of damage reduction. They got a form of fast movement. They got a danger sense, which let them sort of, you know, have like almost a sixth sense about traps and hazards and being flanked.
That one kind of goes back to what you're talking about with the wilderness thing. I kind of like that. Right.
And so, you know, if we go back to first edition D&D, the Barbarian basically was hard to surprise. Everybody else, you know, he had like a half, his likelihood of being surprised was half as much as everybody else. But yeah, so they laid in this foundation in 3.0 of raging, fast movement, damage reduction. And that's basically what you got in fourth edition. It's where you got in fifth edition, and it's what you got in Pathfinder 1 and Pathfinder 2. So at some point, so Lampley is saying, I wonder where the Barbarian Rage ability from Baldur's Gate 2 came from, since it was based on second edition. Lampley, maybe that is the answer. Maybe Baldur's Gate 2 included this Rage ability, which was still very clearly second edition, and they thought, that's awesome, we're going to put that into the game. And that's going to be our Barbarian for third edition. So maybe that's it, Lampley. I don't know. So Honest Benny says, which pretty much pigeonholes them into the rage stuff instead of being a more like a tribal warrior, cunning and closer to nature. But I guess it would probably start to come close to the Ranger. Yeah, I agree with you. And Honest, we're going to get into Pathfinder 2's Barbarian in a second. But one of my main complaints about the Barbarian in Pathfinder 2 is they are fairly, I mean, like not only like thematically, but like mechanically, they are pretty much pigeonholed into raging.
It's literally given to you. Why would you not use it?
Well, also the fact that pretty much all of your feats require you to be raging in order to use it. So, you know, that's where you kind of get into a problem. But we'll kind of get into that. All right. So that's kind of where Barbarian came from. Again, it's been around since the beginning of the game or close to it, but it kind of disappeared for a while. It came back with a vengeance in third edition with sort of the modern framework that we know, which is raging, high hit points, low-ish armor class, some form of damage mitigation or damage reduction. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty, and the kind of, you know, kind of a little bit wily and guileful and has some danger sense or whatever. And that's pretty much been true for the last 23 years. So the Pathfinder 2 Barbarian is sort of just continuing on with that tradition. And so let's take a look at what we get with the Barbarian. Bob, any, overall, what do you like? I mean, what are your thoughts about the class? Like, what do you like about Barbarian?
The 5e one's better. No.
Shots fired.
I mean, I love a good barbarian, but that like
And we,
resistance is like so good in 5e. Like it makes him so strong.
yeah, I mean, again, we'll get into this when we get to it, but
Not
I think I've seen you play
probably too strong.
I've seen you play barbarians in 5e. Matt played a barbarian when we played 5e in our campaign, and the 5e's barbarians rage ability, which gives you resistance, which in 5e just means you take half damage against all physical attacks.
So strong.
It's such a different, powerful feeling than. This is even a PF2 knock, but like the Barbarian's damage reduction in PF1/3.0 was always fairly middly. I mean, it was like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 points. It's really just not a lot. And you know, to be honest with you, it always feels a little underwhelming. So Orpheus is there was a Berserker fighter kit. Yeah, Orpheus, I mentioned that there was a Berserker kit, but it was part of the fighter. And I guess they just decided that we were just going to tack that onto the Barbarian, but it was always the Berserker was a separate thing from the Barbarian, and they just kind of stacked it on top of each other. So let's talk about the Barbarian. Okay, for starters, key ability is strength. So one of the things that you're going to see with the Barbarian actually is their key ability is strength, which right away tells you these characters are first and foremost primarily designed to be a melee character, because while the fighter has key strength, they can also choose dex, right? Rangers can do the same thing. Barbarians.
You chose Barbarian for a reason.
Right. Now, while there may be options that allow, it's not like Barbarians, I mean, they are proficient with all martial weapons. So a Barbarian can easily use ranged weapons, but you will see that not only is their key ability locked into strength, but you know, a lot of their abilities don't even work with ranged weapons. So, you know, you're basic, and not only that, their abilities don't even work with, you know, light, agile, finesse weapons. You basically are locked into being Anonymous, a big damage wielder. $25. Hey, Anonymous, tip $25. Thank you, $25 Anonymous. I don't know if you meant to say something or not, but appreciate it. And then we got a super chat from Jonka. He says, hey, we got Bob the Barbarian. Got to settle on buying a car? Sweet. We'll catch the VOD later if you all are still going. Well, good luck buying your car, buddy. It's always a very trying thing. Actually, my car door broke like this today. It's weird.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, like it's like the part that like keeps the door from just swinging wide open. It's almost like the little like piston that like keeps it closed. Yeah. It just snapped. I don't know. So I'm gonna have to fix it.
You're just too strong.
I'm just too strong. You know, I'm starting to work out. Strong. But anyways, Anonymous, I don't know if you did that on purpose or on accident, but if that was on accident, why don't you give yourself let us know and I'll give you a quick shout out, but thank you for that.
I just reminds you, like you slammed the door open.
Yeah, you slammed the door open.
Classic jokes.
So the Barbarian is tied to strength, but you will also see, and just by the way, okay, it was our friend Combat
Medic.
That is Combat Medic Bush.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Was sending the love before heading to bed. Forgot to put my name in Night Owl. Thank you for your support, continued and always. Appreciate you. Appreciate your service, and thank you for continuing to love and support the Knights. Thanks. I hope you catch the VOD and enjoy it. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for supporting these streams. If you want to be like awesome Combat Medic Bush and continue to support more Pathfinder 2 conversations and streams, make sure to also check out our Stream Elements link and send us some love.
Smash that like button.
Smash that like button and subscribe. Okay, anyways. But Barbarian is pretty much an example of what we call a SAD class, which is single attribute dependency. And the Barbarian's pretty simple to make because number one, most of your abilities are going to tie off of melee weapon attacks, which means you want to max strength. But as we will see from level 1, your other class abilities key off of your constitution. So you're going to want, and you're going to want both. So like my guess is if you looked like, I don't know, 90% of Barbarians that have been made for Pathfinder 2E probably started with an 18 strength and a 16 con. And so, cause no one can have an 18 con. So, cause it's not a key stat for anybody yet, but, and so once you've got that locked in, you're kind of done. Like that's kind of everything that you need to do. We'll talk a little bit about where some of the other attributes need to go, but for the most part, like you've done it. You did it. Like you have everything. You have all the stats that you will need to function. So Barbarian. We'll talk about the. I'm gonna hop over to the proficiencies sheet. Okay, so weapon proficiencies. They are your bog standard martial character. So that means they're trained at level 1. They go to expert and get critical specialization at level 5. They get master at level 13. This is the same as every other martially oriented class, of course, except for the fighter, who is, of course, a little bit more, proficient than other people.
Shadram tipped $10.
Hey, Shadram. All right, Shadram, tipping $10 says more classes. Well, there are quite a few of them, Shadram. Thank you for your support and appreciate it. Does smashing that, Shadram then tipped. Then tipped for more Bob. Oh, thank you very much for that. That is awesome. Thank you so much. Shadram, that's awesome. George says, does smashing that like button have the rage trait? No, because
it has the concentrate tag.
It has the concentrate. If you're raging, you can't smash it. So there's nothing unusual to talk about here about the Barbarian, except to say that, Jason B with a $10 tip.
Jason B tipped $10. Nice. Doing some class reviews. We should have probably done that. Quick question for Bob. How would you rate the most important attribute of the Barbarian? The role playability. Clearly better than the fighter emo, but worse than the Oracle for sure.
So Jason B wants to ask you a question, Bob. He wants to know, how would you rate the most important aspect of the Barbarian? Its role playability.
Oh, as long as you can yell smash and map attack almost all the time, you don't have to role play.
Right. So in other words, the advantage of the role playability of the Barbarian is that you don't have to role play.
Yes, actually not role-playing is role-playing the Barbarian.
Right, just rage, move, smash. And if you want to see that exemplified to a T, go check out our Rise of the Rune Lords adventure path, where you will see Bob not role-playing with the best of them.
When I tried to role-play, it just was awkward.
Yeah.
It was better to not role-play him.
So Barbarians have a normal weapon progression just like everybody else, but whereas some of the other classes do get ability to sort of maybe mitigate some of their attack penalty, like rangers and monks can have agile weapons. Rangers can take things that let their multiple attack penalty become quite small. Barbarian doesn't really get any of that. The Barbarian is almost always going to be at -0 for their first attack, -5 for their second attack, and God help you, -10 for their last attack.
I haven't worn my map attack shirt.
Sick. That is awesome. So let's talk about the armor real quick. So the armor of the Barbarian actually looks the same. They're medium armor. And just kind of for references here, medium armor caps out at 4 points of 8 armor from requiring 1 point of dex. But it's going to be very hard for your level 1 Barbarian to afford breastplate or even chainmail. So most Barbarians are going to start off in armor, medium armor, that gives you 3 points of armor, and you'll need 2 points of dexterity to make up the difference. And that kind of sucks because now you feel priced into putting a 14 into your dex. And I really recommend that you do that anyways, because you're going to want to bump up your reflex save. So like you're probably best off starting with a 14 dex, because we'll get to this. Obviously, this is not a spoiler alert here, but you're going to be raging almost all the time. And when you rage, your armor class goes down.
Yep.
Also, Barbarians, there's nothing against the rules that says they can't do this, but Barbarians tend to have two-handed weapons. So you're probably not going to be using a shield that much. A Barbarian could totally use a shield. There's no reason they couldn't use a shield, but most of the time,
you chose a Barbarian for a reason.
Most of the time, Barbarians end up wielding two-handed weapons. And so you end up in a situation where, your armor is going to be, a point or potentially 2 points, depending at the early levels. If you didn't put your 12 or 14 into dex, armor class. So you're going to have it with 1 or 2 points lower than everybody else. And as a result of that, Barbarians get hit a lot. Barbarians get crit a lot. like they get hit, they get
They
crit.
need that temporary HP.
Well, we'll get to that in a second. Obviously, barbarians have no spell casting capabilities. And now let's talk about their saves, which I think are kind of interesting. Let's see here. So Zach says, hey, I wasn't expecting to get to the stream. Thought I'd be watching the VOD. Well, welcome, Zach. Rule of Cool is talking about maximizing champion potential. We'll talk about that in a little bit, Rule of Cool. We'll talk about archetypes. Rivo, our boy Rivo, coming in with a $10 super chat, throwing Bob some love. Rivo. He says, beefy boys finally getting some love. Glad you guys did this video. Well, Rivo, thank you for the support. Thanks for being here. If Bob's in the house, Rivo, you know we had to do Barbarian. Sinister Schism wants to know what you're sipping on, Bob.
Little Bullet bourbon.
Bullet's good.
Oh yeah, it's also affordable. You can get a big boy for relatively good price.
It's good stuff. He says noise. So Barbarians start actually with. Again, it's so funny to me. I'm going to scroll down to their will saves. It is so hilarious to me that Barbarians start with an expert in will and the alchemist starts at trained. It's so funny to me that like the Barbarian has this like ironclad will compared to the alchemist. Almost every class in the game, it seems like, starts with an expert will, except for the fighter, the gunslinger, and the alchemist. The ranger doesn't either. Okay.
Map is tight.
So here you go. So that's kind of a cool thing. Amongst martial classes, the ranger and the fighter both start with trained, but the barbarian does get expert. Now, the barbarian does get master in will, but not until level 15. But, it's still better than, the fighter and the other classes that don't ever even get to, master. So the barbarian actually starts off with a pretty good wisdom or pretty good will save, which is important. That being said, you could do a lot worse than barbarians. We'll get to this in a minute. Most of the time, perception is going to be used for initiative. And so that means you're going to want to have a high perception because barbarians want to go first because you need a rage.
Yeah.
And so barbarians really want to go first. And that means you're going to want to have a high perception, which means you're going to want to have high wisdom. And so unless I think I'm off the boat here. It's like a lot of times when you're a barbarian, when you get your 4 ability boosts, you're going to be boosting strength, con, dex, and wisdom, right? Your 3 saving throws and strength, because that's really kind of what you need. You don't really need intelligence, and you probably don't need charisma. But
yeah, it just depends on if you're going to do an intimidation type bill or something. But
yeah, and there's probably better characters to do that.
Well, that's my point. It just you talk to your party and you go, I'm going. This is kind of the route I'm tied into. Can someone else be doing this?
But we can talk about where barbarians suck, and that is reflex saves. Yep. Now, this is a blessing and a curse. So I say it's a curse because barbarians started trained, and then it takes them a while. They become expert, and they don't get any better at it, which is the same as, let's say, the cleric or the champion, right? There's a lot of classes actually in the game that kind of suck at reflex saves. Number one, a lot of times reflex of the 3 saves, fortitude, will, reflex. Reflex in some ways is the least bad because fortitude saves will mess you up. They'll slow you. They'll disease you. They'll turn you into a frog. Will saves, no fun, right? Paralyze, domination, mind control. Most of the time, reflex saves are just, boom damage.
Now, do you feel like will saves will come in later in the game, like at higher levels more than like the reflex saves are earlier in the game?
I mean, they can, but the barbarian starts at expert will, and then they become a master at level 15.
This is why you take uncanny acumen.
Well, canny acumen.
That's what I meant. Sorry, canny acumen.
But what I'm trying to say is, like, on the grand scheme of things, barbarians having a bad reflex save is probably like the best save to have bad. The only downside to having a bad reflex save is it's easy to trip you.
Been there.
And that's, I mean, some GMs don't even trip their players. So
some GMs aren't Derek. Trips me every chance he gets.
And so, so that's basically what you're end up being at. Honest Benny says, although other marshals usually take canny acumen anyways for master at will 17. Yeah, right. That's pretty much bog standard. I mean, but getting it for free. And not only that though, Honest Benny, if we go back to the will save, this is important because the barbarian doesn't just get expert in will. They get, master at will. they get the saving throw improvement. So a success counts as a critical success.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Right. So they basically get the evasion. Right. Yep. And when you're talking about a will save, I mean, if you pass the save on a fear effect, for example, you're still going to be frightened 1. You only get no effect on a critical success. So while Canny Acumen can boost your save from expert to master at 17, the Barbarian is getting that for free 2 levels earlier, and they're getting the Iron Will increment, right? Which is actually a really big deal. I mean, it's a really big deal on all of the saves, but a lot of times, will save effects tend to have a pretty nasty effect even on the success that you would rather just as soon avoid. So it's pretty sweet.
But Casey has it right here where he's talking about like you got a little more meat on you. That's what you're a barbarian. So if you miss on the reflex save, you take some damage.
Exactly. And again, you're already a martial character.
Took con.
Right. You're maxing con. You have 2 more hit points per level than the other martial character classes. So the fact that your weak spot is, I take a bunch of damage. Like when you're a cloistered cleric or a war priest and your bad save is reflex, now we're talking about something very different because your con might not be maxed and you only get 8 hit points per level, not 12 with a maxed con. So you're in a much different boat when you are, say, a cleric or even a champion than you would be as a barbarian. So this is my way of saying I think the Barbarians get really, really great saves because the last thing that I want to talk about is their fortitude, which is the best in the game. They start at expert. By level 7, they are already a master in fortitude with the upgrade. Barbarians are to fortitude saves like rogues are to reflex saves. They get master at level 7 with the upgrade. And then at level 13, they become legendary in fortitude saves with the double upgrade, where a success is treated as a critical success, and if it involves damage, a failure is treated as a success. So, I mean, and you're going to have a high con anyways. And honestly, fortitude saves, for my money, from what I know of the Pathfinder 2 spell system, and fortitude saves are the worst saves, in my personal opinion, in Pathfinder 2. For no other reason than it's slow. Right? So
it just devastates.
Yeah, it just devastates. So I think Barbarians actually have really good saves. Yes, obviously monks have better saves. Rangers, I think, probably have better saves. But for the way that it lines up with their class, having insane fortitude, very, very decent, respectable will, and their reflex sucks. But if you're going to have something suck for this particular class, I don't think the reflex is the worst one to have.
It's also nice having it low level because, let's be honest, a lot of people don't play at the higher levels. So you're kind of beefy and sweet early on, which if you're, like you said, if you want to do fortitude, having the Barbarian's pretty dang nice.
Right. And so the last thing I want to talk about is their perception. They start at expert, which is great. Most of the sort of combat classes do start at expert, the non-spellcasters basically. But whereas the gunslinger and the fighter and the ranger and the rogue and everybody else get master proficiency by level 7, the Barbarian has to wait all the way to level 17 to get master. And Canny Acumen isn't going to help you because Canny Acumen can boost one of your 3 saves, but can also boost your perception. Well,
and you want to go first.
And you want to go first. And this is why I say most Barbarians are probably going to want to invest in their wisdom because you want to get your perception as high as you possibly can. Or do what I always do, which is convince your GM that you kicking in the door with an athletics check should allow you to use that athletics roll. And by the way, there's total support for this in the book. But if I kick in the door with an athletics roll, that athletics check should be my initiative. And if you could get that, if you could pull that off,
that's what you should be trying to do.
Absolutely. Now, there's going to be times where you're not kicking in the door, but yes. It should absolutely be the case that if somebody kicks in the door with an athletics roll, again, the rules for the game are pretty straightforward about this. It's the same way that if a rogue is sneaking, when they roll stealth for initiative. Well, if you're doing something athletic that is initiating the combat, it is in the rules, then you should be rolling athletics. By the way, that is Barbarian secret number 1, which is
just every door in.
Athletics is the only skill that uses strength. Figure out a way to make every check athletics.
You know what's funny is I tend to be it's funny because I play the Barbarian a lot, but I don't tend to do that a lot. But Smith, who is also on the channel a lot, he's always like, kick the dang door open. can I roll athletics? Like he knows, like right away. It's like clicks right away to him.
Yeah. Well, not only that. I mean, you know, we talked about before. It's like, okay, look, this is the class that they gave us, right?
Yep.
Well, I got to do the most with it that I can, you know.
Look for those opportunities.
Look for those opportunities. And you know, we were joking about the role playability, but it's like, yeah, that kind of leads you to that kind of play style, right? Right, where you're like
Smith's comment, William Brandis in the chat. He's like, I try to roll Arcana with my sorcerer for int all the time.
Exactly.
He is taking advantage all the time of that thing. It's something that you should be thinking about as a player. Is there a way I can take advantage of where my weakness is, or where can I get the most out of my class?
Zach Jennings says, this is kind of interesting coming from 5e. Did PF1 Barbarians get the same kind of save boost, or were they more like 5e Barbarians where they were weak at will, strong at reflex? Zach, I can't exactly remember, but I do know that Barbarians got, I think, a bonus to their will saves when they were raging in Pathfinder 1. So when a Pathfinder 1 Barbarian was raging, I believe they got a bonus to their will save. So there was still kind of an element there of, you know, their minds were almost too focused on the rage to be easily.
They're nutting up there to
or
get
yeah,
them.
or they're just nuts.
It's one or the other.
Right. KC says, make the sad class more sad. Kind of, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say that the Barbarian is a one-trick pony. But Bob, you played a Barbarian a lot. You're playing a Barbarian. Tomorrow, you and I and Smith and our friends, we're going to sit down. We're going to keep playing our Abominations Vault campaign. I mean, your turns are kind of the same.
Yeah, I mean, you get the flavor of the type of instinct you go with, but like, I mean, there's a reason I picked it. I want to do a certain thing, and I'm gonna lean into that, and that's what I want to play. And so I don't mind that it's a one-trick pony. You know, you lean into your class the way you want. That's why, I mean, now if it was not so rage dependent, I wonder if I would actually expand more into what the class could be. But it's what it is.
Right.
GM Rufus tipped $50.
Hey, Rufus!
If you could make one official change to the PF2 Barbarian, what would it be and why?
All right, so GM Rufus, thank you very much for that $50 tip. Almost setting us up our goal. We're only $5 away, so very, very much thank you for that. Asking a question, which is, if you could make one change to the Barbarian class, what would it be? Now, Bob, we'll skip ahead here because this is a pretty awesome thing. What would you say? Would you change? Pathfinder 2 Barbarian class.
It would either have to be something with that dang concentrate tag, or like, I mean, a simple one would be getting rid of like the raging intimidation feat and having that just naturally happen.
Just have them automatically be on.
Yeah, that was one that came up a couple times. Like, why am I not intimidating as I'm raging? Which I think just happened. But the biggest thing I always get into trouble with is the concentrate tag. But again, that feels like that's what you're supposed to do. I don't know. The 5e one is so dang strong with the resistance.
Yeah.
But I don't want it to be so broken. I don't know. Maybe get rid of the rage thing. Let me have more options. Let me do Berserker as a thing within the Barbarian.
The simplest, easiest way that I would say to do it. Number one, I would say there's a couple things to change. Number one is, I actually think the Barbarian is a little bit of a false promise. So this is kind of a long way of getting to this. The Barbarian looks like it is this very tough class, but in my experience, it is actually kind of a glass cannon.
Big Boy Billy tipped $5. Pouring one out for Chrome, the Barbarian's Barbarian.
Big Boy Billy pointing out one for Crom, the Barbarian's Barbarian, and that takes us to $100. And Ryan
underscore tipped $5. Well, there's the complete girl right there.
and that actually over. You guys both had the same idea, so we'll take it. We'll take it. Thank you, Ryan. So thank you, Big Boy Billy, and thank you, Ryan, for those $5 tips to get us over our goal. So great job. Thank you.
What did they say?
Big Boy Billy said, shout out to Crom. Pour one out for Crom, the Barbarian's Barbarian. That was Mr. Smith's OG Barbarian. And Ryan said, just finishing up the goal. So thank you, Ryan.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
So getting back to Rufus's $50 tip. By the way, thank you everybody for all of that. Obviously, and just because we're at the tip goal doesn't mean you can't keep showing us some love if you want to. By all means,
and smash that like button.
I think fundamentally the Barbarian has a problem with survivability. I think that armor class is way more important in this edition than it's ever been in any other prior edition. I think giving the Barbarian the penalty to the armor class is a lot bigger of an issue than it seems to be. Them not getting heavy armor means they don't get heavy armor specialization. I think that the damage reduction from raging is too little and it's too specific in terms of damage types and applicability. I think the temporary hit points you get aren't enough from your rage. So
I remember you've talked about that. They don't scale right.
Yeah, I just don't think it's not. It goes up by 1 a level basically, and it's just not enough to scale with the damage in Pathfinder 2. I don't know what the number should be, but like if a barbarian has 200 hit points, I want that rage to be like 50 temp.
Yeah.
Right. I want it to be like more like 25% of what I want that kind of shield.
Especially with the lower armor class.
Right.
They're getting hit. So they need to absorb it.
It's not even that they're getting hit. It's that they're getting crit. And that's the problem. And it's just like, it's so devastating. So I just feel like the barbarian does not have that staying power. And I also think that it's a problem because people see the barbarian, the way it's presented, they see these abilities, they see these defensive abilities, and they think, oh, I get it. I'm the big meat shield thing. And it's like, yeah, but you're actually so weak defensively that you can just get tore up. And before
I got knocked down a lot when I played the barbarian.
And by the way, obviously we said a barbarian could use a shield. Fair enough. But realize that there's also support for the shield in other classes that barbarians don't get. Like if you're a fighter or a champion, well, number one, you could be a fighter with one-handed weapon and have some sort of feat which lets you parry or do nimble parry. If you're a ranger who's dual wielding swords, oh, no shield for you. Yeah, but you could pick up your 2-weapon parry and still get a circumstance bonus to your armor class through taking an action. If you're a champion or a fighter, you might get a free action to raise your shield, or you get reactive shield, or you get a free action each turn that you can use to raise your shield. The point is that barbarians don't get any of that. And I think that is probably my biggest issue, GM Rufus. That's what I would change is they're just, they don't have the hit points and damage reduction they get aren't enough to offset their defensibility at best. And I don't think they are. At best, they're even, and I don't think they are. I think the barbarians should be better, right, than even. Daniel VD with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Daniel. Says perhaps they should get some sort of resistance to critical hits while raging. I don't hate that. I don't hate that. I think that's pretty good. I think getting hit is less of a problem, and we'll get into this when we talk about barbarians and the playstyle and what I would like to see versus what you actually get. And it might come down to the way that most people play Pathfinder 2, and it might come down to the way that most of the adventures are written for Pathfinder 2, which is to focus on sort of more powerful enemies. And it seems kind of counterintuitive, but I think the barbarian is actually a much better class at fighting a lot of weaker stuff.
Oh yeah, they want whirlwind and all that stuff.
Well, it's not just that. It's that the barbarian, they get their armor class is lower. They don't have the same attack bonus, and they don't get all those benefits like having access to agile weapons or being able to do 2 attacks with a single action, like a monk could or a ranger could.
They're not gonna get crit as much.
Right. So
a solo boss, they're gonna get crit.
Right. But so it's like when they're fighting against a bunch of lower creatures, okay, when they make a second attack, it's with -5. Right. There's just no way that they can get around that. So that means that if you're fighting lower level opponents, that -5 that you get for that second attack doesn't feel as bad. Secondly, yeah, barbarians do big damage, and it's awesome. But this is getting really nerdy and into the weeds here, Bob. But like the fact of the matter is, like, if you look at the way that damage scales in Pathfinder 2, and you look at some of the numbers in the math, what ends up happening is a lot of times is like the barbarian crits for 100. Oh, that's awesome. But the monster only had like 30 hit points left. So it's not like you didn't need to do 100.
Yep.
Right? You only needed to do 30. So what you really want to fight are monsters that can basically be one shot with your crit, right? Because then you're like getting the full value of that crit, right? There's no like spillover damage. Secondly, barbarian, and also I just think that's a lot more fun. But secondly, if you look at what the barbarians get, which is we're getting into the class features here. At level 3, they get deny advantage.
Oh, so good.
Right? Which makes
especially if you remember it.
Right, which Bob never did. But like, if you go back to Rise of the Rune Lords in the second adventure, when you guys were fighting that army of ghouls, every character was flanked, and technically you shouldn't have been, because that means that not only that's a great defensive buff because you're not getting that penalty to your armor class, but flanking only is a problem if you're fighting a bunch of ACs. a bunch of monsters. So if you're never fighting a bunch of monsters, then deny advantage is never going to come up. Furthermore, later on, barbarians get a form of damage reduction. They get resistance, but it's not that high. So if you're level, 9 and you get raging resistance, which is equal to 3 plus your constitution modifier, which at this level would be 4. So you're getting 7 resistance. If you're level 9 and you're fighting a level 10 or 11 or 12 creature, and they are hitting you, dare I say, critting you for 80 points of damage or 90 points of damage, you taking off 7 feels like shit.
Especially if you played the 5e one before.
but if your barbarian is level 9 and you're fighting a bunch of level 7 monsters, who aren't critting you, who are hitting you, but they're hitting you for 20.
Yeah, that's way better.
And now you're taking off 7 from each of their attacks. Oh, and they're not flanking you, right? Now in that party, like even the fighter in full plate, maybe even the champion, they are flanked and they are taking that full 20. So they're taking, and they're getting hit because there's a lot of creatures. So they're taking 20, 20, 20, 20. That's 80. Whereas in that situation, you would have only taken 40. Not to mention that temporary HP buffer that you get looks a lot better when it doesn't get auto drained and you still lose hit points the first time you get touched by an enemy. So I actually think that barbarians are like horrible against bosses.
Yeah, they're like, can I go over to that cave over there with the low level goblins? We're ready to go.
Right. I mean, to me, like barbarian is the class I think is the most fun to play, and its mechanics, given what we have in the game, are most suited to fighting basically hordes.
Yeah, which seems
lower
opposite
level
of being in a berserker. Well, I guess
no.
I
mean, against the high level opponent, you're just going to get crit into the ground.
Which is what happens. I mean, that's what happened a lot to me.
Right. Yeah. So, all right. So, to keep talking about it. So the barbarian gets rage at level 1, and this is your core ability. And again, if I had a GM Rufus with that $50 tip, if I had another problem, it's that rage is not an option for the barbarian. It is a requirement, because not only do you need to rage to get your damage bonus, but most of your feats do not work if you are not raging. If we go to level 5, where you pick up brutality, which gives you expert in your weapon proficiencies, but you only get the critical specialization effect, aka trip with your knock them prone with your hammer, or make them off, knock them off. What's it called? Make them flat-footed with a crit from your sword. You only get that if you're raging. So if your barbarian isn't raging, not only do you not get access to your feats, you don't get access to your critical specialization effect. And then at level 9, when you get the resistance to damage, guess what? It only applies, you guessed it, while raging. So almost everything, you know how we talked about the rogue, where it's like almost everything in the rogue doesn't work unless your opponent is flat-footed? Well, the barbarian is kind of the same way, which is you have to be raging in order to do this. The problem, the difference between the barbarian and the rogue is that, well, the rogue just needs to make their opponent flat-footed. That's only upside for you. The barbarian has to rage, which number 1 takes an action.
Yep.
And number 2 gives you a penalty to your armor class. So, and number 3, technically it comes with an anathema. So, which doesn't matter as much, but like the point is like the barbarian has to jump through a bunch more hoops just to turn their class on. The ranger has, I think, similar problems with their hunt prey. Basically, Bob, you like to play action text classes.
Yeah, I don't know why. I just have a trope. I mean, I played sorcerers. I've done it.
Right. Well,
more complicated for me.
Right. I'll give you a great example of where this. I will use 4 classes, and I will show you why this is a problem. Okay, because fighter. Now, fighter doesn't have to do anything because they just are always good at using their weapons. So the first turn of a combat, the fighter moves to engage an enemy, and they get to attack twice. Right? Or they might use double slice and attack twice.
Really good.
Right? Which is really good because now they're attacking with less of a multiple attack penalty. But they got to move and they got to attack twice. The ranger. Now the ranger does have to spend an action to hunt prey. Yep. But then they have like twin takedown, or hunted shot.
Yeah.
So they could move, hunt prey, and still get off 2 attacks.
Yep.
A monk usually has to enter a stance. Well, the monk can enter a stance, move, and then flurry of blows and still make 2 attacks.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see where it's like every other class has the ability to make basically 2 attacks in the first round of combat, and the Barbarian doesn't. Even if you take sudden charge, you can still only make 1 attack. There's basically no scenario where the Barbarian is going to make 2 attacks in the first round unless the enemy engaged you first, in which case you can then rage and then you can attack twice. But it's one of those things where it's like, it really is a painful tax, because the other classes that have to pay that tax they get something back for it, right? And most importantly, there's no fucking downside, right? The ranger hunts prey, it's only good. The monk enters a stance, it's only good. Oh, cool. Now I get all these cool new special abilities.
I mean, the rage gives you a little bit of bonus damage, and it gives you the temp HP.
Yeah,
I mean,
but I mean, it should. I mean, hunting prey gives you a bonus as well, Bob.
I'm trying to give you something here.
I'm just saying that, like, it's weird to me that you have this gateway to your class abilities and then they stick a penalty onto it. And by the way, it's not like rage makes you a better combatant, right? All it does is bring you up to the same level that the fighter is, or, maybe not even to the same level as the fighter.
I just think when you're raging, you can't use the contra check. I'm like, I can't do nothing.
Okay. And lastly, what I want to touch on is this last line. After you stop raging, you lose any remaining temporary hit points and you cannot rage again for 1 minute. The rage lasts for 1 minute until you run out of enemies or until you fall unconscious.
Yeah, you can't just stop it. We found that out.
Well, not only can you not stop it, but it means that if your Barbarian goes down in the middle of the fight and gets brought back up, unless you specifically took second win, which is a feat,
yep,
you will not be able to enter a rage again.
Yep.
And that means, like, your class just kind of doesn't work.
Yep.
Right? Like,
you're gonna be tripping.
You're not going to have anything to do, like, because everything is going to rely on you being able to rage. And it's so weird that they punish this class like that. Now, again, going back to our class things, it's like, yes, I think the Barbarian is fine. I gave the class a C. That means it's totally playable. It functions in Pathfinder 2. I promise you, the class is fine. Don't think I'm trying to bring it down. What I am trying to point out here is that the class, in my opinion, has some structural issues.
Yes.
That make the play pattern that emerges from it a little awkward at times, because it puts you into this weird situation. Because if rage was an optional thing, then it would be a little bit more compelling. Or if rage gave you a much bigger significant boost, I think it would be more compelling. As is, now your instincts may change this. You get 2 extra damage with your rage. And that damage is halved if your unarmed attacks or weapon attacks are agile. So don't use agile weapons. You get a -1 penalty to AC. And of course, you cannot use actions with the concentrate trait. So anything with concentrate, you cannot use, which includes things.
Don't archetype into like a sorcerer or something.
Yeah, don't archetype into a sorcerer, which, by the way, includes intimidation. So yes,
which is the craziest thing.
Or specifically demoralize, right?
Yes.
The demoralize action has the concentrate trait, which means that you cannot do it while you are raging.
Unless you take that feat.
But unless you take that feat. So, I mean, that's kind of like, that's always like the tagline, which is unless you take that feat. And so any case, so rage is pretty fine, but the big difference is the rage gets modified by your instincts, which we'll cover here in a second. So as we said, really early on, level 3, you get deny advantage, which, as Bob said, is a really great ability. It's really awesome. Good. Yeah. I think Rogue gets it too, maybe. I think those are the 2 classes that get it. So Damien with a $5 super chat. In free archetype, Barbarian really benefits from a combat archetype like Mauler because it lets you get out of rage combat talents. Azius was a free archetype Mauler, as I recall, right, Bob?
It was awesome.
Yeah. And that's a great point, Damien. It just gives you access to other things. And we'll talk about this when we get to feats, but we asked our patrons today, I asked them, like, what feat would you take at level 1, 2, 4, 6? And a lot of people basically said sudden charge at level 1. And then at level 2, they said dedication. I'm moving out of Barbarian.
I would have picked the other, what was the other one I feel like that was on there? I picked, but they went right to free or an archetype.
Not a free archetype, right? They're like, let me go to
archetype. I forget what I was trying to take. I can't remember now, but
so as we talked about,
shake it off.
Shake it off. Yeah,
I love shake it off because I get frightened all the dang time. So I'm like, let me shake it off.
Shake it off isn't bad. I like it personally. There probably are some dedications that are nicer. So if we look at the rest of the Barbarians features, we get a bunch of proficiency increases, which we already talked about. We can see Juggernaut, which gives you the fortitude bonus and gets you, if you roll a success, you get a critical success instead. They get weapon specialization just like everybody else at level 7. You get an extra benefit out of your instinct at level 7. So when we cover instincts, we'll remember to take a look at what you get at level 7. At level 9, you pick up your raging resistance, which sounds cool. It's a little low. The damage, it's a little low. It's only 3 plus your con modifier, so it's not very high. I mean, let's put it this way. At level 9, when you get it, it's going to be 7. At level 20, and you think about how much damage a level 20 monster does versus a level 9 monster. Okay, how much more damage that they do per attack. So at level 9, it was 7. At level 20, it will be 9.
Woo!
So it's
the 3 needs to be able to scale as well.
So it's like it goes from 7 points at 9 to 9 points at 20. It is pathetically small. Now, at level 9, it's probably actually not that bad. Maybe, especially if you're fighting those lower level opponents like we talked about. But each level that you go up after this, it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. All right, at a level 11, finally, we essentially get to rage for free, but not really. We still have to rage, but if we rage, we get to basically get the action back to do something for free. So now, granted, it has to have the rage trait. Strike does not have the rage trait, but this is mostly going to rely on your feats. So if you have Mighty Rage, it's going to let you rage and then do something with one of your feats. So it's very important that by the time you get to level 11, that you have at least a couple of options that have the rage trait, usually taken from your feats, that you're going to be able to get use out of from the Mighty Rage ability. So it's not quite the same as getting rage for free. Honestly, they should just give you rage for free at that level, but we'll do what it is. So we continue to get better armor, better weapons and armor. Note, Barbarians never get armor specialization. They get up to Master at level 19, but they never get armor specialization. So that is something to keep in mind. All right. Finally, at level 17, you can spend, if you go a full turn without raging, you can rage again. So if you didn't take that feat and you played through the 16 you played through the 16 levels of the game, now if you lose your rage, if you spend a whole turn not raging, you can rage again. But I just point out that that's still not great. Even second wind isn't great, because a combat in Pathfinder 2 is usually going to be about 3 to 4 rounds long. So you're talking about taking 9 actions, 12 actions, let's just say 10. Well, if you're raging, you're always giving up 10% of your actions just to turn your class on. But even if you take second wind or you get to level 17 and you have quick rage, you're going to have to do it twice. So now it's taking up like 20% of your character's classes. So it is kind of tilting. And then lastly, at level 19, your strikes ignore 10 points of physical resistance damage. I don't know why this is in here. I mean, it's at the end of the game, so it doesn't really matter that much, but it's not a bad feature.
No, that's cool.
I mean, getting through 10 points of the question is how many creatures have resistance specifically to physical damage? Not that many is really the answer. I mean, they exist. But 10 points is nothing to sneeze at. So I think we could be pretty respectful about that. All right, Frostjack tipping $5. Let's see what Frostjack has to say.
Tipped $5. If you were to fix up the Barbarians' defenses, Would you increase the temp HP, the damage resistance, or both?
So Frostcheck want to know if I were to fix the Barbarians, would I defensive capabilities? Would I fix the resistance or the temp HP or both? I think if you increased both, it'd probably be too powerful. I think you're probably better to pick one than the other. I honestly think that the temp HP is a more easy mechanic than having to remember to subtract 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 each time.
I also think the temp HP kind of gets you this idea of this berserker rage. So if rage is going to stay as this, I'm so focused and rage is the thing, then temp HP kind of goes into it. I mean, resistance makes sense. You kind of shrug off an injury, but the temp HP just kind of bulks you up so that you can shrug off an injury. So I think it's pretty easy. I would go with temp HP.
Yeah. In fact, it's actually kind of strange that they're both in the game, honestly, to be honest with you, because they kind of do the same thing. Right?
That's my point. I'm sort of shrugging off the same thing.
Hey, Ryan Blue Thunder. Ryan Blue Thunder just renewed their Adventures membership for 8 months. That is 8-month streak from Ryan Blue Thunder. Thank you, Ryan Blue Thunder. Sweet. So yeah, I think that it's weird that they use both of those to give you defensive abilities. Yeah. Dan says 100 viewers for the Barbarian, the mighty Barbarian. Now look, for all the poo-pooing that I just did, the Barbarian is fun, right?
I love the Barbarian.
Right, like
there's a reason I play it almost every time.
You're gonna smash, right? Like that is, because as we said before, Rage says you get 2 extra points of damage, which seems like nothing, but that's because the instincts all change that up a little bit. So, for example,
I'll say it's pretty cool to table to be like the highest damage dealer. One time it gets a little wonky is when you're playing with the fighter and he's double slicing and doing amazing things. But like for the most part, like rolling big D12s a lot of times and doing a lot of damage is really fun.
Right.
So I love it.
Right. So let's start here with the basic Barbarian, which is the Fury Instinct Barbarian, which sucks. Okay. This instinct sucks. I mean, it's like supposed to be the default Barbarian, and they're like, "What's your instinct?" I'm just raging, I'm just mad. Like, there. Not only does it suck, it's boring. Damien with a $2 super chat says, "I would give a progressive scale of bonus HP." You mean bonus temp HP, Damien, or just bonus HP, bonus HP? I like the temp.
I don't mind. I sometimes I forget it to add my temp when I rage, but I mean, most times it's pretty cool.
So the reason why Fury Instinct is Barbarian's born, number one, it goes, you don't have an anathema or an instinct ability. So like already you just don't get, it's like, I'm not saying obviously not having an anathema is a good thing, I guess, but no, it's not. Like anathema is kind of fun. It provides an interesting direction for the class. It makes your character feel,
some role playing in there.
Yeah, there's some role playing in there. And what you get for it instead is a first level Barbarian feat. You're basically trading in one of these awesome, cool instincts to get a shitty feat. By the way, your rage damage at level 1 when you're a Fury Barbarian is still 2. 2 extra points of damage. At level 7, it goes to 6. And when you get greater weapon specialization at 15, it goes to 12 points of damage.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever even thought about taking Fury.
So let's take a look at the raging resistance. Now, on the surface, this looks very good. It says, you resist physical weapon damage, but not physical damage from other sources. So this means swords, knives, maces, hammers, anybody who's attacking you with a weapon, you get to apply your resistance. This means that there is a possibility that this resistance could come up a lot, but remember, claws, teeth, any of that stuff would get right through it. So if you're fighting a lot of humanoid foes who are using swords and weapons and, bows and arrows and all that other stuff, this actually is probably the strongest resistance. But if you're fighting a lot of monsters and other creatures that use claws and, stuff like that, it sucks. So it's kind of dependent upon your campaign. Because it really depends on the type of foes that you're playing for. But on the surface, this is probably one of the better raging resistances because it applies against such a wide arc. But I think Fury sucks, and I think it's boring. So Bob, let's talk about the giant instinct, because this is the one that I know that you have. You know that you have. That you obviously have this.
I just look for the one that dealt with the most damage.
Right. So I mean, the giant instinct pays a heavy price. Okay, the giant instinct is going to do the most damage of any barbarian. They start off doing 6 points of damage with their rage instead of 2. It goes to 10 when others are going to like 7, and theirs goes to 18 when others are going to like 12. Right. So you're doing a lot more damage, but you use a huge weapon and it's clumsy, makes you clumsy 1, which means your AC.
Clumsy was rough.
That means that your AC and your reflex, by the way, the 2 things that we said that your class already struggles with, are going to be basically permanently 1 point lower for the whole campaign. That's really fucking rough. I mean,
now, again, if you guys watch Rise of the Rune Lords, Derek kind of finagled my class a little bit, so I didn't get as punished. I didn't get the clumsy, but
no. You got the clumsy.
I got the clumsy. I didn't get the extra -1 AC. I think, right? Wasn't it? I got
no. You got the full AC penalty. What you were thinking of is when your character got enlarged person cast on you.
Sorry, because I was always being enlarged.
I actually removed the clumsy penalty because I said your character is finally the size that he thinks he is.
Yes. I thought that was excellent.
His body dysmorphia is cured because he's finally the big man that he always thought he would be.
But if I didn't get enlarged, clumsy was rough.
Right. But the other thing about this class, or the other thing about this instinct is I think the raging resistance for this instinct sucks. It's against bludgeoning damage, which has to be the most, at least in my experience jamming for the last 3 years, the most uncommon type of damage. Because number one, most creatures are going to use swords or daggers or bows. And then most monsters are going to use claws or jaws, which are piercing or slashing. The number of creatures in the game that do bludgeoning is like tail smashes and the occasional like thrown rock. I mean, the reason why they say you resist bludgeoning damage, I think is supposed to tie into the giant instinct that they throw boulders or something like that. And then additionally, you have to pick one of 3 elemental resistances. Again, I think tying into the idea of like the frost giant or the storm giant or the fire giant. But this is just so circumstantial. And honestly, I mean, you probably pick fire 99% of the time.
That's what I did.
Yeah, because it's the most common damage type in the game. It's okay, but it's still just very, very, very infrequent.
Look, you pick this one because you want to be big and you want to hit for the most damage.
Yeah, but it turns you into such a glass cannon.
You are already a glass cannon. Play into it more.
I mean, this to me is like an example of where like car hopping goes wrong.
Does it turn you green?
You know, like it's just car hopping taken to too much of an extreme. Like I almost feel like when you're at -2 to AC, you are a liability to your party.
It was rough.
You are a liability to your party. And I get it. You're like, but I do more damage. Yeah, but not that much more damage. And let's be honest with ourselves. With the fighter critting all the time, he's probably doing more damage than you. So, that's the problem.
That's what I'm saying. If there's no fighter in the party, then you feel real good. Like you feel amazing.
Yes. Step 1 to having fun as a barbarian is not having a fighter there who is out damaging you. Absolutely. Oh, we got Alyssa in the stream says, get Bob on these streams more often. Yes. Welcome, Alyssa. Yeah, Gabe says the fighter is definitely doing more damage.
I was watching Tim as Breck in the Frozen Flame just doing work as a fighter, and Kaz is a barbarian,
right?
As Theron, and I'm watching Breck. I'm like, that's what you want to play. I'm like,
right, because Bob, you can't help yourself, right? You're always going to look at somebody doing a lot of damage and go, oh man, that looks so sweet. That looks so fun.
Yeah.
Like, right. And so you've got Thrawn, by the way, we can actually go there next. We can talk about the animal instinct barbarian, because I think the animal instinct barbarian is fucking awesome. I think is my favorite barbarian instinct. Because
it has a lot of fun.
Oh, it's very, very, very cool. But Gabe says in quotes, God, I wish that was me. Well, especially if you did watch our Quest for the Frozen Flame, you know that like Breck, that was Tim's dual. Tim had a double slice wielding axes. He wielded an axe and a hatchet.
Hatchet off.
Hatchet off. Exact. Shadram says, was it Breck doing the damage or was it Hatchet off? But like Breck would go in there and do a ton of damage, crit all the time, just do even more damage. And Thrawn would go in there and he was an ape instinct barbarian. And, you know, he's doing D10s and he's doing good damage. And then Bob would do do 3 damage with his bow.
If I didn't crit, it was meaningless. It was like 1 damage. It was so bad.
It was very painful, especially when we were watching everybody else.
That's why I gave up the Rangers. I said I'm done with the Rangers.
Yeah. So Animal Instinct. Number 1, if you're playing a barbarian and you're going to use a 2-handed weapon, you're probably going to be doing, D10, D12 damage. So most of these animal instincts are going to get you to D10. They don't get you to D12 until later on. When you get to level 7, no. Level 7, the damage die increases by 1 step. So at level 7, your ape's D10 fist becomes D12. So you catch up with other people. But I think a lot of these animal instincts are all very compelling and interesting. From the ape having D10 unarmed and grapple to the deer having D10 piercing and grapple. And the deer also inexplicably gets reach. Like for whatever reason, it goes at level 7, the damage bonus from your rage goes from 2 to 5, but the frog and the deer's antlers gain reach 10 feet. Nobody else gets anything else. Just the deer and the frog. And you might go, yeah, okay, but you're like, yeah, but the problem is, the frog's tongue is only a D4 damage, but the deer's antler is D10.
Yeah, that's sweet.
So it's, the deer is weird. Megavore says the deer is weirdly overtuned.
They probably found a sweet picture of a deer and thought they had to make it amazing.
That's right. Megavore, I agree. Like the deer's antler should probably be D8, but exactly honest. Honest says it's a deer or animal instinct at level 7 is D12 damage, both hands free, with 10-foot reach.
That's pretty sweet.
That means if you even are enlarged, you would have 15-foot reach.
That's sweet.
The deer is, it's just so Pathfinder-y to have the deer be this it's like, oh, is it the ape? Is it, because by the way, the animal instinct barbarian, this isn't just a psychosis. This isn't just like some weird identity. You're not a furry or something like that. You actually turn into when you take the animal instinct, your rage gains the morph, primal, and transmutation traits. You are literally kind of like, the old Sega Genesis, altered beast, right? Remember that game where you could turn into a bear and a wolf and all that other stuff? You're kind of going, you're kind of a lycanthrope here. You're kind of doing a werewolf thing here. So it's like, oh, sweet. Oh, you turn into a massive great ape, a huge bear, shark. Is that the most dangerous? No, it's the deer, man.
Yeah.
Deer will fuck you up. And the deer gets the grapple with the antlers. So that's grapple at range, Bob.
I mean,
that's grapple at range.
Why would you pick anything else?
It's grapple at range. I mean, grappling at range is like
in the gnome flick mace.
It's right. You have a built-in gnomish flick mace on your head, except it's D12s. Anyways, so animal instinct, I think, is a lot of fun.
You can pick the one that's flavorful for your campaign, which I think was really fun. Thrawn wanted to be this Yeti, but he even talks about maybe you're a werewolf or something, and you turned to this wolf thing. It just you can do a lot of things, and I think that also kind of makes sense as Barbarian rages up and becomes like an animal. His animal instincts coming from nature and stuff like that. It actually is pretty cool.
Yeah,
I kind of like that idea.
Now, to be fair, the animal instinct barbarian does, their rage only does +2 damage. And then when they get to level 7, it goes up to 5, and then it eventually goes up to 12. So
still better than Fury, Fury one.
So, the giant instinct was doing 18 at the end of the game. And the Fury is doing 12. So the animal instinct does as much damage as the Fury, but it also gets all of these animal abilities. But here's the best part about the animal. For me, honestly, it's its raging resistance. You get resistance to piercing and slashing damage. And I'm going to tell you, that is the most common forms of damage in the entire game. That is going to be most of your knives, swords, arrows, spears, but it's also going to be your slashing teeth or slashing claws, your biting teeth. This Animal Instinct Barbarian at level 9 is going to be taking off 7 or 8 or 9 points of damage a lot. It's very common. There's even a not small number of spells that do piercing and slashing damage. So you really, I think, get a lot of
kind of growing on me. Animal Instinct.
Yeah, I personally think it's probably the strongest. I mean, I get that
people always said dragon's the strongest. That's what people always say online.
I think dragon is also very, very good. But the other thing about it is barbarians have have a really high strength, and they get some cool feats that are tied to like grappling with people. And I think the Animal Instinct Barbarian is the best grappler because so many of these creatures have the grapple trait on their weapon. Their animal attack. And that means that you kind of double dip, right? If you have a +2 hand wraps and you go into a rage, now if I grapple, my athletics check gets the +2 item bonus to the grapple check. So they actually end up being pretty good grapplers as well. And again, the deer being able to grapple at range is pretty insane. So, yeah. So good stuff. Also, all right. So anyways, Barbarian,
I like
Animal Instinct, really, really good. So Dragon Instinct. So
this one they're reworking?
Maybe.
Because they're reworking the dragons, right?
Oh, that's true. Heard. Oh, that actually makes sense.
I thought some people were talking about that.
Honest says they only get to change this because dragons are no longer colored dragons, but tradition dragons. It'll only be a fluff change. All right.
Oh, okay.
So obviously there's a cool aspect here of, okay, cool. I'm revering a dragon. I'm cool to a dragon, but to be clear, you don't get the morphin transmutation traits. So you're not actually becoming like a dragon. So it is kind of,
well, you could take some sorcerer stuff later. You're still going to rage. You become a dragon.
But, the cool thing about a Dragon Instinct is at low level, your rage is 4 damage, which is better than the, Animal Instinct rage damage is 2. Fury rage damage is 2. Giant is 6. Dragon is 4. So it's kind of in between, but you're also not fucking paying a permanent clumsy 1, Bob. So
I get it.
So that's pretty good. But additionally, that extra rage damage is of a type from your from your type of dragon. So if you are a red dragon, you're going to do extra fire damage. And that could be good or it could be bad. Obviously, if a creature has weakness to it, it's really good. If a creature is resistant to that, it's really bad. So there is a downside to that. I think it kind of has pros and cons. Eventually you go to 8 damage and then 16 damage. So it's right in the middle. It's higher than a lot of the other classes, but not quite as high as Giant Instinct. I mean, but if you go to level 15, Bob, the Giant Instinct is doing plus 18.
Yeah.
The Dragon's doing 16.
Yeah, it's barely
that's 2 points of damage with monsters that have 300 hit points.
Yeah.
But you're not getting clumsy 1.
And don't you get the breath, which you can kind of hit them? Well, I guess the Giant is getting a little bit reach later on usually.
Yeah. You don't get the breath weapon unless you take a feat. Is that right? Yeah, I don't think you get the breath weapon unless you take a feat.
I've never done the dragon one. I've only done the giant and the one we're going to talk about next.
Yeah, I don't.
And animal.
Yeah, I don't think you get the breath weapon unless you take a feat. Lastly, raging resistance is only to piercing damage. So remember our prior one, it got it to piercing and to slashing, which is a huge range. This is only piercing and you get the damage resistance to your type, which again, if you're defensive against fire or cold, it's probably pretty useful because
I still like the breath, even if you have to take a feat. It's pretty nice.
I mean, it's cool. I won't deny that it's cool. Yeah. Sean Trendle is saying that the breath weapon is a level 6 feat. I did not know what level it was, Sean. Thank you.
I think isn't it like 2 feet? You take one, then another one.
And I know there's been talk in chat, and I apologize. Whenever I have a guest on, everybody, I tend to pay more attention to my guests than I do chat. But I did see some conversation going on where people were saying like, about action taxes and feat taxes and whether something was a feat tax. And Damien makes a great point here. He says, let's be honest. If you're taking the dragon barbarian instinct, you're taking the breath feat. So why make them take it?
That's a good point.
Why not just give, like, which barbarian, who is going to, like, I know we talk about Pathfinder 2 as having all of these amazing, incredible options, but that's not an option to me. That's basically saying you're going to take that feat.
If you didn't take it, it'd be like, what were you even doing?
Right. What are we even doing here? Right. So, yeah. So, I like the Dragon Instinct. I think it's very strong. It does a ton of damage without having to pay the clumsy 1 price. I think it is much stronger than the Giant Instinct. I still think that the Animal Instinct is the best.
I would have told you Dragon, but now I'm like looking at Animal going,
there's
a lot of options.
Well, the other thing too I like about the Animal is, you don't need weapons. Like you can have your hands free. Like you can, you could do D12 damage, but not have to have, you could have like a throwing weapon ready. Or something like that. A deer can make their antler attack. A deer barbarian could be holding a bow and still be doing D12 damage at reach. It's pretty sick, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I just always would have, in my head, I always went dragon, giant, and then like animal. Now I'm like, maybe I had that wrong.
Yeah. And again, I also think that barbarian, the grapple game is pretty good with the barbarian. And I think the animal instinct leans into that because they have the hands free. Right.
Yeah.
So,
great.
Yeah, Megafor points out using weapons is anathema for animal instinct. You couldn't even use weapons in a rage. So there you go. You're always going to have your hands free. So, William Brandis with a $5 super chat. I will make the shield rapier barbarian dragon instinct that doesn't take the feat and also doesn't rage for role-playing reasons. This is the way. All right, so they're going to wield a rapier. Right, so they're going to wield a rapier, which is finesse and agile. So they're not going to be able to get anything more. They'll have a shield and they won't rage. Oh, and then you'll take a spellcasting dedication and a bunch of concentrate feats.
Yep. But if you're not raging, then you could cast those things.
Rule of Cool says, honestly, I would kill for +1 accuracy, even for 1s1 AC. Yeah, that's probably worth it, Rule of Cool. A +1 to hit in this game is insane. A +2 to hit in this game is unthinkable. Hello, fighter. Rapier is not agile. You are correct, because it is D8. So, but it is a finesse.
Oh, I thought it was agile.
Yeah, you're honest says it's a hipster barbarian. Raging is so last decade, man. Shields are where it's at. I'll be one of those weird characters that has the double shields in Pathfinder 2. All right. So we've talked about Fury, which is kind of the baseline. We talked about Dragon, Animal, Giant. Let's talk about the last two. We've got Spirit Instinct. Bob, this is your new instinct for our Abomination Vaults game.
It feels very AP focused. Like if you know what you're getting into, this is a fun class, especially if you're specifically knowing what you're going in for. Now, I did obviously find out that Derek, all my rage was not good damage, so that does help. But ideally, this is it's very campaign specific. Yeah. This is a weaker barbarian class in general, but if you know you're going against undead and stuff like that, I mean, this thing is fun.
Yeah, I completely agree with that sort of assessment because number one, the rage damage is a little higher than the Fury, but it is not as high as the Dragon or the Giant, obviously. And it's either negative or positive, which means, and you get to choose it when you rage. That's an extra little bit of damage. Negative damage is going to hit most living things for damage, so it's fine. Yep. Positive damage is particularly useful against undead who often have weakness to positive damage. But there is a situation where if you were fighting an evil necromancer and his skeleton guards, if you decide to go with the positive bonus damage, that is going to work and do damage against those undead, and it might be even trigger a weakness, but that extra damage won't do anything to the necromancer.
Oh, it's funny you say that. I found that out the hard way.
Right. Now, to be clear, we did learn, Bob, that it's only that extra points of damage that doesn't give you so. But
the biggest thing I think is the thing you didn't even mention is you get that free ghost touch.
Right. You do get free ghost touch. And, if you go back to our spells and our review of stuff.
AV, that's sweet.
Right. Abomination Vaults is Haunt, Spirit, Incorporeal, Central. So gaining Ghost Touch for free is awesome. And more importantly, it doesn't take up like we've seen things that give you Ghost Touch, but then it says, you can only put 2 runes on your weapon. It's like, so you could actually have essentially virtually 4 property runes on your weapon because you get the Ghost Touch for free. And then you get the other 3 that you can get for on top of it. So pretty sweet.
But very specific.
And then same thing with the Raging Resistance. You get resistance versus negative damage, as well as damage dealt by the attacks of undead creatures, regardless of damage type. This Raging Resistance is horrible. You only resist negative damage and undead. That's so niche and specific. But if you're fighting a shitload of undead or a bunch of evil clerics that are casting the harm spell, hello, Cult of the Canker, level 3 Abomination Vaults, this is incredible. This is like the best resistance in the game. So I agree with you, Bob. I think this is very much a campaign specific one. I think you know. And then lastly, there's the one that sucks, Superstition Instinct.
But ideally, it has a fun flavor aspect that you're like afraid of, or you don't want to do with magic.
Let me just say this. Don't take this unless everybody in your party is okay with it. Okay?
Fair.
Because, you know, you cannot accept buffs, scrolls, wands from your allies. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of annoying and sort of a pain in the butt. And it's just like important that everybody else is on board. I've always said this before, Bob. Pathfinder 2 is a team game. Don't make your character at home before you've ever talked to anybody on Path Builder, and then you show up with your level 1 character, but actually he's level 20. You've planned him out all the way to the very end, and you just downgraded him to level 1, and you're like, I'm completely priced into what I'm going to be now, a month from now, a year from now. I've never talked to anybody. Anyways, their rage bonus damage is 2, which is terrible, like the Fury, but it goes up to 4, but only against people that can cast spells. You do get a +2 status bonus to all saves against magic, which is very good.
It's sweet.
That's very high. But again, useless against anyone who doesn't cast magic, which for most campaigns is not a lot. Their rage damage goes up from 4 to 8, but only against people that cast spells. And then it goes from 12 to... but then, when you get to 15... it's 8 against all other creatures, which is the lowest. It's even lower than Fury. It goes up to 12, which is what Fury gets for all creatures, but only against spellcasters. And then they get Raging Resistance against 2 of the 4 traditions, not all of them. So, anyways, it is very weak. It's probably fundamentally flawed. So again, Bob, if I were to rank instincts, I think that a case could be made that animal or dragon.
Yeah, I think those are the top 2.
I think those are going to be your top 2. I think they're fun. They're flavorful. I mean, when you're an animal instinct barbarian and you're like getting some of these cool animal abilities, or when you are a dragon instinct barbarian and you're doing extra fire damage with your attacks, and maybe you pick up that breath weapon feat, your character is going to stand out in the minds of the people around you. Look, there's no getting around it. The fighter is the GOAT of martial combat. And I played a fighter in Darker Winter campaign. They're boring. They are boring. There is something to be said about that.
It's funny you say that because I thought you were not boring. I thought you were awesome.
Well, yeah, because you just look at the numbers go burr.
Who are those dice?
Oh my God, there's so many dice. Oh my God, you crit again. Oh my God, you crit again.
So good.
You double sliced and crit twice. But the character that is, smashing through people with a flaming axe, that is coming from their their hands are on fire, like almost like Alita, where she, I don't know if you saw that movie, Bob.
What movie?
Alita, Battle Angel.
No.
Oh, you'd love that movie.
Put it up on movie night.
Put it up on movie night. So anyways, like you're this flaming barbarian who's like imbuing their weapon with your own primordial flame, and then you're breathing a big breath weapon. Like that is very cool. It's very evocative. It's very fun. And it turns out it's also a really great instinct, very powerful. So animal instinct, very good. possibly Deer OP King Lord of the
That's
of
the
all.
craziest thing.
Deer might actually be the most insane one of all of them. Yes, Rivo, I did see that they are making a second Alita, which is awesome because they set that thing up beautifully for a sequel. I had never read the manga because I don't like that stuff, but I thought the movie was amazing and I loved every aspect.
It's an
of it.
anime?
Well, it's a manga. I don't know what that means.
No, manga is the book. The comic book.
I don't think they ever made it into an anime. I think it was
okay.
just a manga.
Oh, I don't think I've ever heard of it.
So dragon, animal, awesome.
Yep.
Giant Instinct is probably next. Oh, there's a good gap, and then we get to Giant Instinct. It is a lot of damage. It's going to be a lot of fun, but man, that AC penalty is rough.
Yeah, you take it as you want to do a lot of damage, but it ain't that much more.
It is really rough. It is really rough. Then we get to Fury, which is boring and I think very unevocative and quite frankly not very powerful. Spirit Instinct is probably on the same level unless you're playing Abomination Vaults.
Yeah.
Or you're playing a campaign where you know you're going to be fighting a shitload of undead. Then this will be a really, really fun.
So really, you're taking those two.
Yeah.
And what's cool about at least those two is there's lots of different options within those two for the type that you are. So at least there's flavor within the two that you're probably going to take.
Right.
That's at least interesting.
And then Superstition Instinct, I think, has problems and also, quite frankly, is going to have some not be as fun. And yeah, so I think the Superstition Instinct is a little bit problematic. And again, everybody should be on board with that. So, all right. So we talked about instincts. Bob, what are your thoughts generally about when you're building a barbarian and you're choosing feats and you're going into that? Like, what are you looking at? What are you trying to
I am trying to do the most amount of damage possible. Probably as soon as possible, or inflicting as many things as I can of opponents. Recently, though, I've been looking at more of like, how can I defend myself? Because I am sort of becoming more and more aware of my glass cannon ability. So deny advantage, stuff like that. I'm very, very aware of like, do I need to take like a reflex or a reaction? Do I need to take something to protect myself? Do I need to position myself in a way to be okay with that? But other than that, I'm really trying to do as much damage as fast as possible, make sure I can get to them and hit them as the best I can. And well, I guess again, the reason I always vote for sudden charge and stuff like that is because I play on maps that you usually do, which are usually 2 times the size of maps that are normal APs. So that is a thing to think about. Maybe you don't always need to run as fast as we have to, but I'm always getting fleet feet and getting going. Yeah.
So I think there's something important, a theme to what
fighter. Bob, that's a fighter.
So I think the theme that Bob is getting into is, as a barbarian, you are essentially slowed 1 the first turn of every fight. Right?
Yeah, because you're raging.
Because you're raging. You're basically locked into raging. So that means that anything that you can do that is going to make you be able to increase your action efficiency. You mentioned sudden charge, Bob. So imagine a scenario where you go first in initiative and the monster is 50 feet away. Well, that's 2 strides and you want to hit. So if I rage, so I could move, I could stride, attack, but that's with no rage.
Yeah.
Right? It's with no rage.
And if you don't rage, there's a lot of stuff you can't do.
And if you're not raging, there's a lot of stuff you can't do.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, even to the point where, if we look later on, the barbarians get a feat at level 2 called No Escape. Right.
Yeah.
Which, if an enemy moves, it gives you a reaction to move with them. It has the rage trait.
Yep.
If you're not raging, you can't use this.
I mean, like, Shake It Off is one of the ones I like. You can't use Shake It Off
if you're not raging. Yeah.
I'm like, oh.
Right. In fact, I think this is the case. Okay, no. Attack of Opportunity does not have the rage trait. So you can make an attack of opportunity. But point is the barbarian is already going to be losing an action at the first thing. And so if you've got to rage your first, I mean, we already talked about this before, right? The other classes, because they don't have to rage, they don't have to use that action. Or because they have abilities like Flurry of Blows or Hunted Shot or Twin Takedown, they might be making 2 attacks in the first round a lot of times. Right? A case in point, we talked about sudden charge. Fighter takes sudden charge. The enemy's 50 feet away. The fighter spends 2 actions, strides twice. They are now in melee. They attack. They still have a 3rd action to attack again. Barbarian couldn't do that, even with sudden charge. So if the enemy's 50 feet away and you have to rage, the Barbarian without sudden charge is raging, moving, and doing nothing. And not even, and now they're not even attacking once.
I kind of like Gabriel's point. He's like, I kind of wish that I don't like rage. I kind of wish it worked like panache.
So Gabriel says, I don't like rage. I wish it worked like panache, but maybe it turns on when your team takes a certain amount of damage or you deal a certain amount of damage to enemies. And then Rule of Cool says what I would say, which is panache is in some ways worse than rage because it can eat up multiple actions. So we haven't gotten into this.
Fair enough.
Yeah, we haven't really gotten into this, but like one of the reasons I'm so down on the Ranger is because the Ranger is the same way as the Barbarian. They need to hunt prey or they suck. But the problem is the Barbarian typically is only going to rage once a fight. But the Ranger might hunt prey 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, right? I do it all the time. I have to keep switching and wasting more actions.
Exactly. And so you're just eating up. Now, to be fair, the Ranger does get access to things like Twin Takedown or Hunted Shot, which lets you get 2 attacks with 1 action. So you kind of trade back and forth the action economy. But the Barbarian doesn't really get that. So if the Barbarian was like having to do it multiple times per battle, you would be in like completely horrible value.
Yeah.
So the point is as a Barbarian, you really want to look for things that are going to help you improve that action efficiency because you're basically, like I said, slowed 1 in the first round of combat. The other problem with the Barbarian feats is a lot of these Barbarian feats are just, keep in mind, no, this might be higher level. The ceiling on Pathfinder 2 is here. Classes are designed to get to that ceiling and not go above it. Mm-hmm. There is no way in this. For example, you might say, oh, well, the Barbarian gets a penalty to their armor class when they rage, which gives them a bonus to damage. So that way they're doing more damage than the fighter because they're getting +6 bonus to damage or +4 bonus to damage. That is true in a very, very simplistic way. But I promise you that the fighter is doing more damage or at least as much because they hit more often and they crit more often.
Yeah.
So
or they're hitting twice on a turn when you're
so
only hitting
what
once.
that means is you're paying a price to rage, right? You're paying a price in order to just turn on your class features, to be able to use your class abilities. Because remember, if a Barbarian raging is at the same rough level as a fighter, ignoring the penalty to armor class, by the way, if a Barbarian raging is roughly at the same level as a fighter, then imagine a Barbarian not raging.
Oh, yeah.
Right? They're doing horrible. So the rage comes with all these downsides. So if we look at like level 1, half of these feats are just feats that help you make rage suck less. like Moment of Clarity is a feat which allows you to spend an action so that you can take a concentration action, which a fighter can just do anytime he wants. You know, a ranger can do anytime he wants. A rogue can do anytime she wants. A barbarian not only has to spend a feat, they have to spend an action. Moment of Clarity, I think, is already kind of questionable. Moment of Clarity should read the following. Remove the line from the rage thing that says you can't make concentration actions.
Yeah.
Moment of Clarity should just say, you know, you can now use concentration actions when you're raging. That no longer is a thing. The fact that it takes an action and it only applies to that round is insanely bad.
It's also funny that you have to rage to use Moment of Clarity.
Well, how can you have a Moment of Clarity if you're not a thing?
Same kind of funny.
Same thing with the classic one, which we talked about when GM Rufus tipped Bob. Raging Intimidation. What does this do? Does this make you a really good intimidator? No. It just lets you intimidate.
Which is the funniest thing.
Because you can't do it.
Nothing more intimidating than a raging barbarian. If Conan's coming at me in a berserker rage, like, nah, if he didn't take raging intimidation, I ain't worried.
Right. But again, even if you do take this, though, it's still a demoralized check, which means it's still an intimidation check, which means it's still a charisma-based skill.
Which you probably didn't take.
Which you're probably, so the gnome sorcerer is still going to be more intimidating than you. This doesn't actually make you powerfully intimidating. It just lets you do it. And to be honest with you, you're not going to be good at it. So now, could you get a good charisma? Could you put a lot of skills into, intimidation?
Yeah, you could build it.
Yeah, you could put it in there, but you're never going to be as good as someone who is actually focused on it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the problem. Part of the problem is that a lot of these feats are designed to sort of just mitigate some of the downsides of being a barbarian. They're not necessarily.
That's why you take sudden charge.
Well, and that's why we did a Patreon poll in our Discord, and like 90% of people picked sudden charge as a level 1
How do you get to that
feat.
Discord, Derek?
Well, you got to join our Patreon, Bob. Patreon.com/Knights of Last Call. We have several different.
That like button.
Smash that like button. We have several different tiers available. Bob and I today have been reviewing the final draft copies of Northern Reaches Season 2. And once that launches, we'll let you all know, because right now it's only signing up for our veteran players. But once open enrollment will start, we'll let everybody know, and you can get in on our massive 100 plus. I mean, the game hasn't even started yet, Bob. I think we have 60 or something, 50 players or something insane.
Yep. And like 30 GMs.
30 GMs. How about that for a GM to player ratio, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, the level 1 feat is often going to go sudden charge. Now, what was really interesting is when we asked people, what would you do at level 2?
Yeah, that's where it got interesting.
Everyone said, I would take a dedication.
Except for me, who took Shake It Off. I thought more people were going to vote for Shake It Off. I was like the only vote for Shake It Off.
Here's the problem. Well, here's the problem, quote unquote.
I just feel like I see this always happen with fear. I see a lot of fear.
Yes, but here's the problem with Shake It Off. The problem with Shake It Off is, it's still eating up an action. Like
I get it.
Like if Shake It Off, here's what Derek's Shake It Off feat would look like. At the end of your round, your frightened condition drops by 2 instead of 1 at the end of each round. And you get a free action each turn to retch.
Yeah.
Instead of making it take an action, I would just give it to you for free. Because then it actually
trust me, you say that I'm super happy, but I still like it. I just got penalized so much from frightened abilities during campaigns.
Yeah, Honest Benny makes a great example of this. The fighter for free gets the bravery ability. Which makes them immune to Frightened 1, by the way.
It's so good. It's so good.
And they don't have to take any actions. They just get that at level 3 for free on top. So it's just like, why am I paying an action for this? And again, it's just like, especially in a class that's already taxed, because like I said, you're already going to be raging.
Yeah,
so
I wouldn't mind if while raging, then you got it for free because you spent the tax to get into the ability to shake it off.
Sure.
But that makes a little sense.
But again, like if you're already raging, what are you going to do? Rage again? So a lot of people said they would take an archetype. And to be clear, I think there are really a lot of interesting archetypes that you could take with the Barbarian. Some people like the idea of taking the Sentinel or the Bastion. Or Sentinel gives you heavy armor proficiency. Champion gives you heavy armor proficiency. Now you have to have a good charisma. But if you kind of want to lean into that intimidating Barbarian anyways, you might have a good charisma. But here's the sick thing. When you go to Champion, 1 dedication feat for Champion, then you pick up the Lay on Hands focus spell, and then you pick up the Champion's reaction, and you're a damn fine defender. Here's the sick thing. Lay on Hands, the focus spell, the Paladin's, the Champion's healing spell. It is somatic only.
I was going to say, does that have the concentrate tag? That's what I was going to ask.
It does not have the concentrate tag. It has the manipulate trait, which means it does provoke an attack of opportunity if the enemy has it. But because it doesn't have the verbal component, it doesn't have the concentrate trait. So a raging Barbarian can lay on hands. That's kind of sweet.
I mean, I like that.
And they can use the Champion's reaction. So it's just another example of the Champion dedication is way, way too good. It's like there's almost no reason to be a champion. You're better off just being another class and then choosing.
I mean, literally, that's what everyone does. Sorcerer Champion. Like they take that as
and I will say this. I've had this conversation on this channel before. I've said the problem with the Champion is you look at the Champion, you go, they've got the best armor in the game. They get heavy armor. They get increased armor proficiency early.
Yeah.
Right. So they're expert at like level 7. And then they get all those shield feats. and you're like, oh, sick, their AC is really, really high. But we said this before, Bob. Why would I attack that?
Yeah.
Right? Like, they're hard to hit, and they don't do a lot of damage. I wouldn't attack them. In some ways, if you were a barbarian with the champion dedication, it's much more compelling for the GM to attack you because he goes, well, your AC is shit.
Yeah.
And you can do a lot of damage. So you know what? Yeah, I am going to attack you instead of your allies. So in some ways, or especially too, if you grab them, right? Because now you've grappled the enemy.
Well, that's what the champion should be doing anyway.
Right, but see, part of the problem with that is like I think the mental image of the champion is, you know, a knight with their sword and their shield or their gleaming spear or two-handed sword. Like the idea of the champion just going in with a grab and being like, I'm gonna grab
the sorcerer. That's what you should be doing.
Brule Cool says, for some reason, everyone raises shield on a champion. Yeah, I don't. I mean, again, I always call this a soft fudge, but like, you know, when we played Rise of the Rune Lords, it was like when Nick would play Escanor, the champion, and he would raise the shield, and he's got the full plate, and he's got expert. Yeah. I'd be like, okay, I just don't attack him.
Yeah,
he doesn't even have attack of opportunity. I'm just gonna like walk around him.
Nick was gonna rebuild that if we didn't die. Well, spoiler: if we didn't go as far as we stopped. It's pretty dang sweet. So again, a lot of we haven't even gone into other archetypes. There's a million other archetypes, but the fact of the matter is that I think the Barbarian is a pretty nice candidate. They could pick up Mauler. They could pick up dual weapon. Mauler's super good. So
dual weapon warrior. There's a lot of really cool feats that they could pick, archetypes that they could pick up. Because I hate to say it, but sadly, I just don't find their feats all that compelling.
I was gonna ask if like during the rogue one, you gave us like the boom, 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 the 3 you gotta take. Like, is there the 1, 2, 3 you gotta take as a barbarian?
I mean, if you're not gonna take an archetype, I do think that sudden charge at level 1 is probably a no-brainer because that way you can rage and definitely get at least one attack in. At level 2, I really don't actually like any of the level 2 feats. But if I was gonna take one, I might take No Escape and then retrain it into Shake It Off once it gets attack of opportunity. If you're really worried about getting taken out all the time, you can take Second Wind. Barreling charges, by the way, bashing charges is an example of something that like most people just let them do anyways. If you were playing Pathfinder, Bob, and a barbarian wanted to stride across the room and break through a barrier while they were running, you would totally just let them do that and make an athletics check.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, bashing charge says you can't do that.
I know.
So I do like No Escape just because it gives you a reaction early on because you don't have one. And it could save you an action potentially. But I would probably pick up Shake It Off or Second Wind later. At level 4, the default is to go to fast movement. The problem
I take almost all the time.
The problem with fast movement is if you already have sudden charge, you kind of don't also need fast movement. And it's a status bonus to your speed, and there's a lot of other ways to get status bonuses in your speed, notably the Wand of Longstrider. So
fair.
Like it doesn't stack with that. So it's kind of like, but if you have sudden charge anyways, I don't know that you necessarily
I just always like to try to get up and around the enemy so that someone could flank.
Right.
If we can get on, because some people are slower than me if I'm raging.
Right. So the other options at level 4 are Wounded Rage, which is a reaction. If you take damage, you can enter your rage for free. Ironically, this is one of the only ways that you can actually get your rage off essentially for free is do shitty in the initiative. The enemy attacks
Which
you.
You're going to do.
You enter your rage. And now you're raging from the get-go. Strangely, this actually might be a very compelling feat.
That's actually interesting because you're talking about saving action economy, right?
I am saying, right.
Save.
Right,
yeah.
right. And that's what I was talking about before about sudden charge, about why those are so useful because they save you actions. Here's the problem with feats like this and why I don't like them. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this feat mechanically. I don't like feats that give me a perverse incentive. I don't like feats.
I want to take damage.
I want to take damage. I want this enemy hit. The enemy attacked me. It missed. It missed. And I'm like, damn. Can I jump into the arrow? Like, is there a way that I can make myself flat-footed to this attack? Can I open myself up? Is there any way like, it's weird to have that sort of what I would call a perverse incentive. Like mechanically, thematically, this is actually a really cool and compelling feat. But yeah. Now, Satir says, this assumes you get a reaction before your first turn, which is always a heated debate.
Point.
I don't think it is. I don't think it is, Satir. The core rule book is pretty clear that you get a reaction.
No, I thought it said it's up to the GM discretion.
I think it says you get a reaction, although at the GM's discretion, you might not. I believe is exactly what it says.
Where's our rules lawyers at?
I'm sure we've got people who've memorized the core rule book in here. But now I don't think you're wrong. Wanting to get hit does sound like a barbarian thing. So that's why I don't hate this feat completely. I'm just saying that like
not bad.
The play pattern of it is a little bit problematic. Also, quite frankly, there's not really a lot of other great stuff for you to say. But
I think like at 6 you take Dragon's Rage if you're Dragon Instinct. If not, you're probably taking an attack opportunity.
All right. Specifically here it says, your reactions let you respond immediately to what's happening around you. The GM determines whether you can use reactions before your first turn begins, depending on the situation in which the encounter happens.
So it says nothing about you automatically get it.
Yeah, there's nothing about it automatically. Here, you now of course, the game that, by the way, they then give you no guidance onto what would be that determination. So I am going to give it to you right now today here in chat. What that means
is it wanting or letting it happen because you don't really care?
Okay. I'm going to tell you what that means right here, right now. I'm going to tell you the correct way that you should rule this. And I'm going to tell you this. It is this. Now, you know how there's no surprise round in Pathfinder 2? Guess what? There is. If the party is surprised, aka they were ambushed, then they don't get a reaction until you get your turn. If the party is kicking in the door and they are well aware that there's enemies in the next room and they're going in with their swords drawn and their spells ready and they're going in for a fight, yeah, and then the enemy rolls really well on your initiative or you really balls your initiative roll, which is weird because we were the ones kicking in, then you get a reaction because you were ready for that fight. So
there you go. That
is a great way in the game to sort of reflect quote unquote surprise attacks. Yep. Right. If an enemy,
Benny said the same thing.
Did he? Okay. Well,
it was funny because he said it and you're saying it. I'm like, are you guys the same person? Like he's like literally saying what you're saying.
Yeah. And you know, as you can judge that based off of the circumstances. But if the enemy is rolling initiative with stealth and they beat the party who is rolling initiative with perception, then my implication is that if they rolled higher than me, I didn't see them coming, I don't get a reaction. But to be clear, it does not say the default is you don't get one. It says the GM decides. Yep. So that's,
well, you heard it here. Night's last call. That's what we're doing.
All right. So we got a £5 super chat from Cybersmith. Cybersmith says, is it a perverse incentive from an in-character point of view? No, it is not. Cybersmith, I actually will agree with you there. It is not. Some barbarians like the rush of combat and the feeling of an enemy's blade in their skin. I completely agree with you, Cybersmith. I actually think it's actually kind of a really cool role-playing component. And I don't think it's a perverse incentive at all in character. I'm strictly speaking as a player here. So yeah, like I think, you know, that is a fantastic, totally fine than you. Yeah. So anyways, that's how I would play the reaction game with that. At level 6, I think you're priced into taking, I mean, the choices here are really attack of opportunity. If you're a dragon, you're probably going to take your Dragon's Rage Breath.
You take your instinct or you take attack opportunity.
Right. Now, Bob, when you first played Azius, you took Cleave, which was a mistake.
I had this idea.
Okay.
That I was going to be just mowing people down.
Right.
I learned later that attack opportunity is actually really, really, really good.
Yeah. And here's why Cleave is a problem. Like, yes, it's cool that you get to make another attack for just your reaction. But two things, remember. Number one, it still has multiple attack penalty. And that is a problem for the Barbarian. Secondly, it has to be a melee strike. It has to kill the creature. And then the foe that you cleave against has to be immediately adjacent to the creature that you killed.
I don't even think it ever came up.
Yeah. If Cleave said, make another melee attack whenever you drop an opponent, meaning like I could be flanked and I drop the guy in front of me, I turn around, boom, cleave the guy behind me. That would be fine. But the way it's written today, the way it's written now, this won't come up all that often. And when it does come up, guess what? You still get your multiple attack penalty, you know? Instead, most of the time, you're going to take attack of opportunity just because attack of opportunity is fantastic and it's great. I see people talking about swipe. I didn't mention it, but swipe, in my personal opinion, suffers from the same problem in that, you know, they have to be next to each other. Now, to be clear, you are getting a little bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? You are getting a little bit of an advantage in terms of your action economy because this is kind of like a double slice. But you also notice, by the way, if you're using a weapon with a sweep trait, you get a +1 bonus to all your swipe attacks, which is further proof that if you are playing in a campaign where you're constantly going up against hordes of goblins and orcs and undead, and you're just, it's 4 PCs versus 10 monsters, 12 monsters, then I would take swipe because that is going to be really, really useful in that campaign. But if you're playing your traditional campaign or your traditional Paizo AP, where a lot of times you're fighting 1, 2, maybe 3 monsters, the idea that both of them are going to be in melee with you standing next to each other,
they usually split out.
Yeah, is very uncommon, especially because
they're never next to each other.
Especially because they're going to want to flank you.
I swear, I don't think it ever happened with Cleave. I don't think I ever used it once.
Right. And so Cleave and Swipe both kind of have that same problem where the targeting requirement is just too strict.
Yeah.
So again, we're not going to go through every single feat in the game.
But 8's where the best one comes up.
Is it 8 or I thought it was 10?
No, wait a second. I thought 8 was the strike.
Which one? Silencing strike?
Yeah.
That's 10.
10?
Yeah.
Oh, all
right.
I thought it was 8. Never mind.
So,
Silencing strike's the best one.
In my personal opinion, this is like one of the strongest feats in the game. It came out of the APG. Cybersmith says with the £2 super chat says counterpoint 10-foot wide quarters.
He ain't wrong.
He's not wrong. Yeah,
he ain't wrong.
I will. Yeah, I will award you a point on that one. That is a good point. Okay. This feat is bananas. This feat is insane. I don't understand how this feat is in the game, but it is. Here's the deal with it. It's one action to make a strike. It doesn't have flourish. It doesn't have press. It doesn't have open. Once you get silencing strike, there's no reason why every attack that you make for the rest of the game essentially wouldn't be a silencing strike.
Yep.
There's no reason. And what do? You make a melee attack. Great. I was going to be doing that anyways. And then if I hit, they have to make a fortitude save. And if they succeed, everything's fine. But if they fail, guess what? They're stunned 1.
Yeah, it's so good.
And if they critically fail, they're stunned 3.
Yeah.
Now, it does have incapacitation, of course, because it would just be completely bonkers and balloon. But, like, this is a fantastic feat. It's just, I mean, look, yeah, it's incapacitation, honest, but I mean, like, what are we really hoping? I mean, we can't hope for much more than this. I mean, this is about as good as it gets. Oh, so like enemies my level? No, enemies of your level or lower. So if you're fighting a PL party level 0 or lower monster, then they get it. Also, honest Benny, yes, higher level monsters, I do get the incapacitation bonus, which means that they're only going to fail basically on a critical failure. But guess what? That still means that every time I attack an enemy, there's a 5% to potentially a 10% chance, if their fort save is low, that they end up getting stunned 1. I still think that
it does nothing even if they're higher. Like it still hits them. It's still a strike.
Right. At best, it's just a better strike.
Yeah, I just don't understand.
And here's the most important part. You get this at a reasonable level in the game. It's not level 18 or something like where you get to do it for 2-3 sessions. Now, Gabriel, you are exactly right. Great feat. Don't take it. We don't need more rolls during the combats. Great, Gabriel, you are absolutely right. This feat is annoying as shit. It is. No, it really is. It's horribly annoying. It is horribly annoying because now every time they roll, you have to make a save. So now you've doubled the number of rolls in the game. It's actually insane. It actually is insane. So I do agree with that. But yeah, this is a crazy crazy good. Now, Cybersys was integrated into the macros. Okay, we don't all play on Foundry. And also, like, not everybody... See, it's integrated in the macros, and that's how you end up getting the Bob problem. Where it's like, I don't know how to play my character without the macros. Yeah,
I don't even know how to play them with the macros.
Right, Gabriel's like, you're like, you swing your sword, and you've got a Thundering Rune, a Frost Rune, and you got Silencing Strike. You're like, okay, first things first, he has to make a fort save, or he gets shoved one, and then he's got to make another fort save, or become stunned, and then he's got the Frost Rune, so he has to make another save, or he becomes slowed. Ican says, wow, I thought that feat just made them stupefied. This is way better. Yeah, it's a very powerful feat.
And at level 10, like, it's just so it's like right in a good spot.
Or Orpheus says that they like the pew pew macro. John asked, just a hair off topic, do we have a release date for the updated core books? I think the first one's coming out in November, John. I'm sure people can correct me if I'm wrong there, but Honest says it's a nice feat, but compared to the other, well, we can't compare to the other martials, Honest. We can only compare to the Barbarian itself. Because yes, there are some really good level 10 feats out there in the other people's departments as well. But as a Barbarian, it's a nice feat to look forward to. It's very powerful. And it lets you do what you want to do, which is just crush people and crush names and take houses. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of fantastic
no. This is when
feats.
you're taking like your archetype feats. Like you're trying to get into Mauler, I think. I went into Mauler and I started taking the Mauler feats.
Like,
I mean, Quaking Stomp is cool if you think you're the Hulk. I mean, you could do like Hulk things, but it's not like
but a part of the problem is, remember, as a Barbarian, you've already spent so much in order to
strike.
Well, you've already spent so much as a Barbarian to get bonus damage, right? You've took an action to rage. You're taking a penalty to your armor class. You have paid a heavy price to get plus 12 damage or plus 10. So if you're not striking, if you're not doing that, you are not getting, you're not getting the full squeeze out of your lemon. You know what I mean? Like you paid the price, but you're leaving change, you're leaving money on the table. Like once you rage, you are highly encouraged to just strike. Obviously with a -10 map is no good. But I will say this, something that we were talking about today. I understand that there's a common play pattern, which I think people get backwards, which is this. Let's say that you are a grappling barbarian. Let's say you took the wrestler archetype, which is a great wrestler, which is a great one. Maybe you're an animal instinct barbarian who went wrestler archetype. Maybe,
oh my gosh, it sounds so familiar.
Right. Maybe your name is Thrawn from our quest. But maybe you're using free archetype, or maybe you're using class feats to pick up the wrestler archetype. Either way, your idea is kind of a grappling barbarian. Very cool. I think that is a fun way to do it. But I think the problem is people get it backwards. And what I say is backward is this. A lot of times people will go and they will use their first attack action, where there's no multiple attack penalty, to grapple. Because in their mind, I'm a grappler. And that is the thing that I want to succeed at the most. Or they'll use it to trip with like an athletics check. The thing is, for most of the game, your athletics score is going to be higher than your attack bonus. Because you're going to be an expert in athletics before you're an expert in weapons. Then once you become an expert in weapons, 2 levels later at 7, you're going to become a master athletics. And then at 13, you will become a master in weapons, but at 15, you will become a legend in athletics. So athletics for most of the game is going to be better than your attack bonus. So what that means is, Cybersmith is correct, but your next attack will be against flat-footed, so it cancels out. That is very, very true. But it's still a -3.
Yep.
So I think you're better off attacking with your strike first and trying to ideally
deal as much damage as possible. The best attack you can have.
Right. Have the best chance you can to crit, because your secondary attack, where you have -5 map, can be your grapple. Because quite frankly, number one, critting on a grapple is sweet. Don't get me wrong. Restrained is a very nice condition, but like critting on a trip is not even that much better than just tripping them. It's D6 extra damage. And while restrain is very nice, once you've grappled them or you've, restrained them, it's kind of the same difference. Whereas the difference between hitting and critting in Pathfinder 2 is huge difference. It's literally double damage plus critical specialization effects plus rune crit specialization effects. So critting with your strike when you're raging, which you've already paid into to increase your damage bonus, that has to be your number one priority, even if you are quote unquote a grapple build.
What if there's a fighter in the party?
Well, then you don't matter anyways.
That's what I'm saying. You just grab him because you want him to hit.
Well, Honest Benny's talking about deer builds and
read that thing. Is that actually true? This animal monk wrestler thing he's talking about? Is that?
I mean, yeah.
Thing?
All right. Well, let's take,
ridiculous.
Let's take. I don't know this feat by the part of my thing. All right, Furious Grab. Your last action was a successful strike, and you have a hand free or your strike used a grapple weapon, which is definitely true if you're a deer antler. You grab your foe while it's distracted by your attack. The foe you hit becomes grabbed as if you had succeeded. Yeah. So there you go. So you can attack the person. Hit them, which is what you want to do anyways.
Yeah.
And then instead of having to make an athletics check at -5 because of multiple attack penalty, you just pop that and you just auto grab them. So this is plus grab.
Yeah.
This is plus grab.
I mean, that's kind of sweet.
Yeah. So anyways, very sweet. Dear Barbarian OP.
Everyone's making deer. The next release, there's like deer. Everyone's running deer barbarians.
You ever see like that? What is it? I can't remember what it's from. It's from some movie or cartoon where it's like Bambi, but he's like all jacked.
Oh, I don't know this.
Oh, you know what it is? It's a Saturday Night Live skit with The Rock, where you know how like they've been making the live action versions, of Disney movies. Well, like they did it.
Play what's his face in Moana, Maui.
Right, but they did a joke. They did a joking one on Saturday Night Live where he played Bambi. And he's like, but he's like huge and got biceps, and he's going to kill the hunters that killed his mother. So anyways, so the Barbarian, I think has a couple of problems. I think it's action tax heavy. I think the AC is an unnecessary penalty. I think it's kind of a glass cannon. I think it should gain more.
Definitely a glass cannon.
I think you should get more from your rage than you do. Is really what it comes down to. But here's the most important part. You fundamentally have to kind of really fix the whole. I mean, you'd have to rebuild the whole class. I don't like that rage is a requirement.
Yeah.
It feels like a requirement. I mean, yes, there have been times where because of the nature of the fight, you did not rage in the first round. But that's more of like a penalty than a choice, right?
If I didn't rage in the first round, I'm almost like, why didn't I get to? Like you sort of get frustrated.
Right. It's because you weren't able to for some reason.
Correct. Because you want to do that. So why didn't I hunt prey? I wasn't able to.
Yeah. So part of that's part of the thing I just ultimately don't like about them. I don't like that there's no choice. Like you basically have to rage. Yeah. And I don't like when the game makes that choice for you.
That's fair.
So, that's again where I think for me, that is the biggest fundamental problem I have with the Barbarian. And so that locks them into that one action. And then it obviously locks them in, and it's like, okay, well now I'm raging and I can't concentrate. So there's a whole swath of actions, including spell casting, that I basically cannot do. Yes, you can lay on hands because it's somatic only, but like for the most part, most spells in the game, you're not gonna be able to do. And there's a lot of character classes out there that have a lot of fun by splashing a dedication into a spell casting and picking up something. And here's the worst part. They're paying all this price. So they absolutely are the undisputed kings of dealing damage in the game. Yep. No, they're not. That's the problem.
If I was locked in, but I was the best.
But if you were undeniably the GOAT,
then it'd be okay.
Then it would be okay. But you're not.
And that's what I don't like. When I see a fighter rolling better than me or hitting more than me, I'm like, why did I pick this one? Why didn't I just pick fighter? I
mean, there's even high-level ranger builds with their lack of multiple attack penalty that can out-damage the Barbarian. So it's yes, no other class is going to get the D12.
I don't know why I'm even playing Barbarian. I should just playing fighter. I like the idea of what a Barbarian should be.
Right. You're in love with the fantasy.
Yeah.
Right. You're in love with the idea of the Barbarian.
Yeah.
Right. but the thing is, it's like in this game, this is kind of like the problem with the Oracle, right? The Oracle gets its curses, which you would think, okay, these are definitely disadvantages, so this should make me stronger than the other casters, right? No, it doesn't. It makes you as strong as the other casters who don't have to have all of these downsides and negatives.
It's like this random flavor for no reason. I
Yeah,
mean, there's
well,
a reason,
it's not
but
just
it just penalizes
but it's
you.
not just flavor. I mean, it's a real mechanical, distinction, and it's actually taking actions out of your economy. And so that's the rage action itself isn't fun, and like it's even less of a choice, because arguably you could say, at least in Pathfinder 1, you had a certain number of rounds of rage a day. In 5th edition D&D, you get X number of rages per day. So it feels like you're making a choice. But in this game, there is no choice. You just have to rage.
Illusion of choice.
Yeah,
There is no spoon.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, if you're a barbarian, you're going to be raging. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Which I don't mind. I guess there was an idea that I could have the choice to there'd be a path.
And going back to what we said before about where the barbarian came from Unearthed Arcana, they get athletics plus 3 skills, which is like one of the lowest in the game. So like before, they used to be this idea of this, they were this kind of consummate wilderness warrior. And now they don't even have that. They are just this big, scary damage monster. But as we proved, they are not the highest damaging class. And their toughness is kind of an illusion, because they're going to get hit and crit so often.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, I want people who sit down to play a barbarian to get what they pay for.
Yeah, I was like, you're not selling me on it right now.
Right. Like, and now again, does it work? Is the class fine? Yeah, I mean, it does what it does, But in my personal opinion, the barbarian should be the king of damage and should be the big, meaty hit point buffer thing guy. And yeah, they do get a lot of hit points, and people associate that with survivability, but it's not really the case. Now,
I actually don't mind Cybersmith's point here about aid.
All right. The thing is, with aid, the fighter can add accuracy to the barbarian. Barbarians can't give his damage to the fighter. Accuracy is cheaper than damage. That's a great example.
It's a pretty good point, Cybersmith.
Yeah.
It's a really good point.
Yeah. Now, to be clear, Cybersmith, you're absolutely right. So with good teamwork, barbarian gets the highest DPS. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is no better class except for the Magus, okay, or a what is it called? Spell Strike, Eldritch Archer, right? An Eldritch Archer or a Magus. Other than that, a barbarian, there is no better class to put or dump like a heroism spell and an aid action and we set up a flank for them and we synesthesia'd or we frightened 2 or we clumsy 3'd the opponent, because if you're gonna dump all of that bonus, Satir points out Megaton Strike. We used to do that.
Kaz did that a lot in our one game.
When I was a fighter.
Yeah, he's an inventor.
Right. He was an inventor. And what did I do to him a lot of times?
Yeah,
I would double slice.
Yep.
Aid the inventor.
Yep.
And then
that big Megaton Strike.
And then he would come in with the big Megaton Strike on his big D12 hammer and just, blow shit up. Right. So the barbarian is a great sink for those,
That's
things.
True. It's very true.
And to be clear, that might be part of the compelling reason for why they're maybe okay. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know how many people are out there playing Pathfinder 2 at that level that we just talked about. I know there's a lot of groups out there I know who have nerfed aid and make the DC scale, which means that you're not adding plus
aid better.
Yeah, we made aid even better.
The other thing I always see is people trying to haste the barbarian. I feel like that's like one of the classes you don't haste. Unless he has to get up there, unless he has to move up there. But a lot of times it's like, what am I doing with all these?
Right.
I'm not striking anymore.
Right. Like you want to give haste to like the champion, right? Because it's like, he's like, I had to move and I had to raise my shield and I had to lay on hand somebody, and it'd be cool to make a strike.
Yeah. The only time I haste the barbarian's good is like turn 1. Sure. I get my rage for free. Basically.
Yeah. Basically.
I'm going to strike anyway.
You're going to strike anyways. Yeah. So again, I think it is the case that there's a lot of interest in that component of being the barbarian and playing the fantasy of it. And yes, you can use aid, and you can use heroism, and you can really put a lot of buffs into them. And they're a really great source for that because, again, how much damage they get. But again, that's a lot of ifs, you know? ICANN says, I see people -10 swing more than 8. I know it's a travesty, ICANN. Part of the problem, ICANN, all right, a little bit of a rant here. Here's a little bit of a rant. It's because at the very beginning of the game,
aid PSA. We have a whole video on aid PSA.
Yeah, we do we?
We our 3-action economy.
We talk about it.
Like
no, but we just
aid.
No, we you know what? He's right. I need to do just a video or something where I just talk about aid.
5-minute Friday. Just
my 5-minute Friday, right? Which take 15-minute Friday. But the thing about it is the reason for that it's bad game design, and I'll tell you why. Because at low level, like when you're first starting this game, most people might look over aid. They don't even think about it. But maybe they do try it out. And you know what they discover? It's really bad. DC-20 is really hard to hit. You crit fail a lot, give people a penalty, or you fail into nothing. Yeah. It feels very bad. And that teaches people, oh, don't use aid, it sucks. Even though it becomes unbelievably powerful later on. By the time they get there, they've learned, you know, it's almost like a learned helplessness. They've learned that it's not good. I think aid should be compelling from the very beginning of the game and doable and usable. And I think, because not only that, forget all the mechanics of it. Aid, in my opinion, is leaning into what Pathfinder 2 is all about, Bob, which is teamwork, right? Yep. It's hey,
action economy and teamwork.
Right. It's paying attention. We talked about this the other day on the stream, the Rogue stream, about why I like things like opportune backstab, because I like it when I have to pay attention on your turn. Yes. If I'm preparing to aid you, now it's your turn. I got to pay attention. I got to remind you, hey, Bob, come attack this guy so that I can give you the +1, 2, 3, 4 bonus.
I you know, and I still don't use aid enough, but I'm selfish, but I think aid is so good. Like it's so fun and so strong. Yeah.
Rule of Cool says, what is the best percentage to aid should be on every level, in your opinion? Well, Rule of Cool, my house rule is that aid has no check.
Yep.
My house rule is that the aid is automatically successful. If you are trained, it's +1. If you're an expert, it's +2. If you're a master, it's +3. If you're a legend, it's +4. Number one, I want to skip unnecessary die rolls, that especially if they're being rolled by the person whose turn it isn't, because I think that takes spotlight and time and attention away from the person whose actual turn it is. And now we have to watch this entire D20. Now you still have to spend the action on your turn to prepare, and you still have to spend a reaction on their turn in order to initiate the aid. But I cut out the check.
Well, I always just liked your argument. You're like, I'm trained in this thing. I'm an expert in this thing. Shouldn't I be able to do what I'm an expert in?
Right. Like the interesting thing, the die roll is for, can this person hit and do all their damage? It's an exciting die roll to lean into that, because you're like, what's the difference? Oh, if I hit, it could be 50 damage. But an aid check has just as much mechanical complexity as that, and it's for determining if you're going to get a +1 bonus or a +2 bonus.
It's just away the more die rolls that you don't need to do at the table.
And also, like, look, you're already spending an action. You're already spending an action and a reaction, and then somebody might fail on top of it. And it's not even to do something cool for you. It's to help somebody else out. Yep. Like, I think that kind of behavior should be encouraged, not discouraged. And so again, I just make it +1, +2, +3, +4. Trained, expert, master, legendary, Temel.
It just goes so fast.
And then it's quick. It's quick. It's quick.
Like, I'm going to aid you. We're going to +1. It's like, oh,
hey, +2, go. Yeah.
+1. This is what I did. It's so smooth at the table, guys. Like, it's really efficient.
Yeah. So that's kind of my thoughts process on it. And I think aid is really awesome. And again, I like that aspect of the game. Every time we have played with a Magus or an Inventor or whatever, we try to stack all those bonuses onto there. But yeah, anyways, cool. Awesome stuff. So
if I don't see a deer barbarian in Northern Reaches, I'm gonna be super upset.
I mean, I listen, I had read, you know, I'd seen people talk about the deer barbarian before, but I didn't realize, I honestly, until I was preparing for tonight, I did not realize that I saw it and I was like, okay, that's fine. But I didn't realize that it inexplicably gets reach.
Yeah, that's so strong.
It's so Like the frog tongue getting reach and it's a D4 damage.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the antlers go to D12, which is just as high as anything else, and get reach. What the hell? There's no downside to it. It's just insane. Yeah, the antlers are long, but like so are like, I don't know, freaking ape's arms, or
the bull's horn. I mean, the
Yeah,
is longer, but
the horns of the bull. Yeah, I mean,
the whole herds of deer barbarians in northern reaches.
Boothby with a $5 super chat says, any thoughts on allowing retroactive aid checks? Character prepares, then announces their reaction once they know if the other person has hit or not. Boothby. In Pathfinder,
we done that?
Yes, because in Pathfinder 1, I introduced a system of using essentially your reactions to aid people's attacks and their armor classes. And the way it worked is, depending on your base attack bonus, a character would get a certain number of reactions each turn. So you would automatically start with 1, you might get 2 or 3 later on if you were like a fighter or a ranger. You could also take a feat to get a couple more. For a reaction, you could give an adjacent ally a +2 bonus to an attack roll after the D20 roll. Because, and honestly, it felt awesome. And I really like it. Now, I believe this will make your characters more powerful in Pathfinder 2. But I actually think it's worth trying because I think it's very satisfying and it feels... It's not about the game mechanics. It's about the feel of what actually occurs at the game table. Okay? Because now what ends up happening is, and I know this sounds stupid, but like if I'm about to attack an enemy, I need to roll a 15 to hit. Okay? Or a 13 to hit. Okay? That's what I need to roll on my D20. Bob says, I'm going to aid you before I roll. Number one, Bob has to, that a lot of times it's my turn. I attack. Oh, I was going to aid you, right? So there's already that sort of miscommunication that can happen. And it feels bad because you're like, dude, I prepared to aid you and everything. And it's like, okay, it's kind of a weird missed opportunity. But let's say I need a 13 to hit. And now you aid me successfully, and that number drops to 11. Okay? Because, right, you gave me a +2 bonus to hit, expert, right, Bob? Yeah. And I roll a 15 or 16. So I would have hit anyways. It makes you, Bob, feel like you wasted your turn. I know you didn't, but it kind of, even everybody at the table feels like it's almost like you didn't aid me because I would have hit anyways. The only time it will really come up is if I roll exactly 11 or 12, which means I know I would have missed with a 13.
Yeah, but
which means only 10% of the time will it feel like you're doing something. Now, the distinction is, in the other scenario where you aid after the fact, you wouldn't aid me unless it was going to make a difference, right?
What happens if you don't aid them?
Well, the key thing there is you get to keep your reaction. So you don't feel like you wasted it, and more importantly,
my attack opportunity is still active.
Yeah, and more importantly, it means
I'm on board with that. I'm okay with that.
And normally, more importantly, it means that whenever you do actually aid, you're only going to aid when it's going to make a difference, when it's going to turn a miss into a hit, or when it's going to turn a hit into a crit.
I mean, logically, it doesn't make sense for like how combat would do, but it feels cool.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like play pattern. It's all about the play pattern. And not only that, it's about the feeling that it generates at the table. I actually like that, Boothby, a lot. So I actually like that a lot, Boothby. Cybersmith with a 2 pounds. As a GM, how often do you have enemies aid? Never. Very rarely. And I'll be honest with you, Cybersmith, you should have them do it, but it's such a pain in the ass. And you have to track which enemy was aiding and which monster. And especially if you're running multiple monsters, and then you got to track their reaction, and you got to track which one was preparing and which one was doing what. Now I'm rolling twice as many dice. You should do it. But in my experience, most GMs don't. In fact, I think that's...
I only think I've seen you maybe aid once. You mostly just like trip us and shove us. Like you do that kind of stuff.
Right. Like I honestly think that it is... Now, Cybersmith, when I'm with my house rule, I probably would do it a lot more. Which is just like, oh, he's aiding, it's automatic +1, you know, because he's trained or whatever. Or he's a higher level monster, we'll consider him expert, he's +2.
That's that way you do it.
There's no more die rolls, it's just quick, boom, boom, boom. I think that's fine. So I do agree with you. That's a great way to have non-boss monsters be threatening. I agree with you. If the party's outnumbered by lower level monsters, the party has some nice advantages. But if they can flank a PC, giving them flat-footed -2 to AC, and then they can aid for another +2 bonus to their attack, that's a 4-point differential. That's pretty significant.
That's a smart enemy group.
That's going to work out. But I think a lot of GMs have a problem doing that to their players because it feels like you're trying to kill them. It feels like you're trying to dick them over. I know that sounds crazy, but I think a lot of players view their GM using tactics against them as the GM being adversarial. Do you feel that way, Bob?
No, I just feel like you're. What's the answer if I always feel like you're adversarial? Like I just feel like you're trying to when you actually get in the mind of the monster, you're not trying to beat us during the campaign, but when you're actually playing the monster,
right? You're
trying to do what a monster should do, and that is usually to defeat its enemy in front of it.
To be fair, they should probably probably run away in fear and terror. But
you do that too. I've seen you do it.
Okay,
I've seen you do that many times. What I'm saying is like when you sit there and go, "I'm going to attack this guy," or "I'm going to aid or flank." I've seen you do it, and that's because
they're trying to kill you.
An encounter.
Yeah, they're trying to kill you.
And you go, "Ooh, I'm a goblin, and 2 of my other friends got killed. I'm out of here."
Right. And I'm rolling my dice in front of the screen, so it's like that it's all above the level. So yeah, I agree with that. All right, Rivos with $5. Slightly off topic, but how much do we need to raise to get an aquatic edition of Combat and Tactics? Oh, great question, Rivo. Well, Rivo, we're working. We filmed it months ago, but I'm finally editing our Combat and Tactics versus Spellcaster episode, which will be out here probably this weekend because I don't have a whole lot going on.
Sweet.
And that's like an hour-long video with a 30-minute bonus video for our patrons, all about tactics, ideas, strategies for martial characters, caster characters, how to fight against enemy spellcasters, and just like a bunch of cool tips and tricks and cool, rules of thumb and lots of sort of our thoughts. It's me, Bob, and Aaron having a pretty in-depth conversation about that. If that video does well and our patrons enjoy it, then yeah, we could absolutely talk about doing a different combat.
What's
tactics.
Cybersmith's thing? Is that water pressure?
Water pressure rules.
If we do an aquatic edition, we gotta get some water pressure rulings in there.
Okay. Now Damien says intelligent monsters should use smart tactics. If a GM had zombies do it, I'd be pissed. Now,
I've never seen you do something stupid like that.
I wouldn't, but I also feel like that is kind of a misnomer because, like how differently do you play your PC when they have an 8 int versus a 16 int?
I don't know if I look at the int. I just think about the monster. If I'm a zombie, I just go for brains.
But
if
I'm just saying, like, I do think that there is a certain, like, I don't disagree with what Damien's saying, but I do think that like it's a slippery slope, right? Because suddenly you start going like, oh, the zombies can flank. I'm like, okay, well, what about the kobolds? What about the orcs? What about the ogre? Is the ogre allowed to flank? How dumb are they? Like, and how is the GM supposed to make that determination? It's very, very tricky. And most importantly, the players sure as shit aren't doing it. Mm-hmm. The players are never going to be like, I would flank and aid with you, but my character is only int 10. And right now I think they'd be distracted and they're not going to do that. Like no one's playing like that. Absolutely no one playing like that. Anyways, I mean, yes, I guess I would probably give, I would give the if anything, Damien, I would think that creatures that were truly mindless should have like a locked in action strip where it's like the GM is forced to stride as many times as possible to get into melee with the closest enemy and then strike as many times actions as they have left, rinse, repeat. That it should be like almost a script that the monster has that you're forced to follow. Because that would make more sense to me because they're mindless. They're basically just running on a program. My party would kill me if I said I wouldn't flank because
I was just reading that.
Yeah. So, I don't think that's a horrible rule of thumb, right? If they're mindless, aka they're immune to mental effects and damage, then they're not smart enough to flank. I'll buy that. I'll buy from you. I just get people all the time where they're like, I can't believe the ogre or the troll didn't attack the heavily armored plate mail wielding shield raised champion to go attack the gnome sorcerer who's throwing fireballs. It's like, well, yeah, they're not int 2. You know, yeah, they're int 6, but like that's still smart enough to know what's going on. I mean, like, anyways. All right, Barbarian. So, Bob, we've talked about the Barbarian now for about 2 hours.
Yep.
You're playing one tomorrow.
Yes. I think I have to level it up before tomorrow too.
I think you do have to level up now.
Yeah, so I'll be doing that before the session starts.
So what have you taken away from tonight, like in terms of your thoughts on the class? Do you still like it as much as you did?
No, I actually don't.
Okay. Sorry, Bob.
I don't like it as much as I did in terms of why I'm taking it as like a damage dealer expectation. I still think that Barbarian is a flavor. Again, if it was reworked a little bit, I think it's such a cool idea. And I love to be this hulking barbarian thing. Even the idea of this swift ranger, nomadic barbarian is really cool too. And I want to be able to play that kind of guy because that's the style I want to play and that's the kind of guy I am.
Yeah.
But I if I'm not dealing the most damage, then I might as well just be playing a fighter.
Yeah.
But luckily in ours, we do a lot of aid, so maybe I am doing the most damage sometimes.
Right.
But I think I need to think about action economy a little better because I am doing a lot of raging, and I think I need to, again, I'm playing Barbarian for a reason. I'm gonna lean in heavily to it. Now I'm a weird Barbarian because I'm also like a ghost whisperer person. I'm a ghost hunter, so that's kind of different. But yeah, I still like the Barbarian, but I think I like the 5e Barbarian a little better.
Yeah,
it does feel super powerful, and if this is a little bit more powerful, I think I would like even more. But next time I'll try something different, I think.
Yeah, and the Barbarian has an interesting problem coming in from Pathfinder First Edition into Pathfinder Second Edition. You see, in Pathfinder First Edition, Bob, when a Barbarian raged, what actually happened is their strength and their constitution temporarily went up. Right? So if your constitution temporarily went up, that meant you were getting more health. You're getting more hit points. Mm-hmm. Your strength would go up, which meant you would do more damage, but you would also
be better at tripping and grappling.
But if your strength went up, what else does strength determine? Besides damage,
ability to hit,
your accuracy. Yep. So when a Barbarian raged in Pathfinder 1, yeah, look at you. When a Barbarian raged in Pathfinder 1, they got more accurate.
That's pretty sweet.
And in fact, Barbarian's base attack bonus was the same as a fighter's. So a raging Barbarian with a higher strength score because of the rage was more accurate than the fighter.
Sweet. So if it was almost like +2 damage, +2 accuracy, that'd be like, whoa.
But
it was too strong.
It would probably be too strong. Yeah. I don't know that there's an easy fix. I mean, I think like obviously, I think number one, I think the rage should give you a lot more temporary hit points. Yes. Right now, today, it gives you level plus your Constitution modifier. I would just make it double your level plus your Constitution modifier. I think that is actually. I think that is a totally reasonable change, and I really think that would be a lot more satisfying in a lot more situations. Number two, I would probably make Raging Resistance a little bit easier. I would probably make Raging Resistance like, okay, it's 3 plus your con against everything, basically, and then against certain things, maybe like just the one thing. Like if you're a red dragon, against fire, it's doubled.
I just don't like the 3+. Like,
I don't know.
The 3 doesn't scale. The 3 just stays the same every level. Like, but it's something different. Half level or.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe something. Maybe you take Constitution out of it. I don't know. But like, you're already getting more temporary hit points. I just think that you really just add that. Secondly, I think
if you're getting the more temp hit points, maybe it's not a big deal.
Yeah, and then the second thing I would do honestly is like without trying to go too deep into the math, I might add 2 to 4 to 6 to 8 points of damage to the various rage values. Like if the giant instinct is doing +18 and the dragon instinct is doing +16 and the other ones are doing 14, like I would make them like 4 or 6 points higher.
Yeah. Just make it more damage.
It's gotta be compelling. It's gotta be something that makes it so that other like the Barbarian should be able to do that damage because I
want a fighter for my versatility and be able to do everything.
I mean, the class
Barbarian for one big hit.
You're paying a price to get that damage. Yeah. You're paying an action. You're paying I can't use concentration actions. You're paying I get a -1 to my AC. So none of the other classes have to pay that price. So it's like at the very least it should be better, right? Yeah. It should be more compelling. So yeah. Melissa, how do you aid as a spellcaster or ranged? Melissa, that's a great question. And the answer is with Arcana checks and with attack bonuses. If I'm a ranged character with, say, a bow or something else that's like reload 0, I might say, I shoot an arrow past their ear to, distract them, or I
prestidigitation.
I fire them. Or if you have cantrips, right? Like the idea being that like I'm firing off a little zip of fire at them. Or you could just get really lean into the role play about it. Like as a fighter is about to attack you and you're a spellcaster, describe how magical energy surges around your hands and courses up the fighter's blade as they're about to strike, and then make an Arcana check to aid. And you're like, oh, what spell are you casting? Nothing. I'm just aiding with Arcana. I'm just flavoring it in a fun and evocative way that makes it seem like I'm doing something.
Yeah, it's all about like, again, you're getting incremental damage or incremental bonus accuracy. It's like, are you distracting him? Basically, is how you're sort of wording it. So you go, it looks like I'm casting a ritual or something.
Frostjack just did the math. If you got 4 times your level plus con, you would get an approximately 30% increase in hit points when you rage at level 1, and approximately a 23% increase in your hit points when you rage at level 20, which seems pretty fair. Yeah, maybe. I mean, yeah. I know the number should be higher, Frostjack. Maybe it's 4 times. I would just try at least 2 times the level. Bob, maybe we'll try that starting tomorrow, right?
What the heck is this? Bob take a ranger and then take the barbarian archetype? Sounds like my worst nightmare.
Great role-playing Debbie is in the house.
Oh, gosh.
with a $5 super chat. Says, not a fan of 5e, but damn, does the half a ton of damage feel very impactful. Also glad to be back in the live. Hey, Bob. Yeah.
The half damage is so strong.
But we spent like the first 5 or 6 minutes of the stream talking about strong. Bob playing a 5e barbarian and being like, holy shit, this is really, really strong. Like you are such a tank. Like there were so many fights where you took an astronomical buttload of damage.
But it wasn't.
But
I was surviving when
but you were just surviving like a motherfucker. You know what I mean?
I was taking so much damage.
So that's pretty sweet. So yeah, Nilo Kakra says, Bob, if you want more attacks and more damage, play a ranger with the flurry, hunter's edge, and take the barbarian arc. Yeah, this is where we get into these builds and all this crazy nonsense. And I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm just saying like it's like you shouldn't have to jump through all those hoops to just live the fantasy of the class. If the fantasy of the class is the big hulking bruiser who does a ton of damage, then it should just kind of do that. You shouldn't have to like kind of come up with these different crazy weird builds in order to do that. London says, what if fighters just took a -2 penalty to their maps, make them multi-strike dudes? So give them normal weapon proficiency, but make them -2 or make their map -3, -6. Maybe. I don't know. That kind of probably gets into the ranger that like touches on it. But again, I don't think rangers should be dual wielding anyways. I don't understand. That's a Dritz Duerden thing, which is a fighter thing.
Well, don't get Derek started.
Yeah. Great role-playing diversity, which is the fantasy. I want to walk into an army and take the hits. They don't miss me. They hit me and I am fine. And I completely agree with that.
Yeah, which is why the temp HP going up or the raging resistance in 5e works.
So the other side of this is either put feats in, which would probably feel like a feat tax. But imagine when you rage, you get that temp HP buffer. Now imagine that you had access to feats or class features, which you got automatically, that said things like, whenever you drop a guy, that temp HP buffer refills.
Oh, that'd be so fun.
Right? Or imagine it said, like, if one of your allies got crit, that temp HP buffer refills, or your rage damage doubles for the next round because you're seeing your enemy, your allies are getting taken out, or they're getting crit upon, or, you drop somebody, or you get crit, you take the damage, and then your HP buffer gets like a boost back because you're just driven on by the rage, right? I think that would be really fun because at least that makes it really interesting. And you're sort of like, yeah, as a barbarian, I feel rewarded for just crushing and smashing and hacking and chopping my way through things. So yeah, I think that would be.
I think Frostjack's doing some more math for you.
Level 1 at 4 times con is 7 hit points versus 4 raw. It's 44 versus 14. 44 seems off. 14 is the pathetic part. And then it's 85 versus 24 at level 20. It's
well, like, I'm saying, see how small that is?
Yeah.
Like 24 at 20? That's nothing.
Frostjack says, getting temporary hit points or THP when you drop someone feels very inspired by 4E. Lol, it is inspired by 4E.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. It was actually a fighter, one of the fighter subtypes, which is called the Battle Rager fighter, which had the vigor powers, and the vigor powers were basically whenever you hit somebody, you gain temporary hit points. So, Great Role Playing Dev says that feels so evocative. I want that. Maybe the damage goes up when my friends get hurt, an upward spiral. Right, exactly. Like, I love the idea that a barbarian starts the fight kind of weak, but like every round of combat, they're like getting more and more scary and more deadly. And the rage
of a blood rage, a blood berserker. Like
Right.
the idea is like can't be stopped. The more
Right.
blood and
Yeah,
but then there's that idea. You did this in Dungeon Time Extreme, which is a game that Derek ran at a home game. But this idea that sometimes when I was raging, I had to check to make sure I could stop raging. If not, I would start attacking my friends because I got so extreme. I thought it was so cool.
Right, but we also made your rage really sweet.
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome.
In 5e, when you rage, you take half damage from physical attacks, and you get like +2 damage to your rolls. But what we did is we gave Bob...
Mighty Dave tipped $5. Derek Dash, how do you feel about your favorite class after talking to me for 2 hours?
Oh, someone tipped?
Bob, I like it less from...
Mighty Dave tipped $5. He said, Derek, Bob, after talking about your favorite class for 2 hours, how do you feel? And you're like, I like it less. And if that's not Knights of Last Call, I don't know what is. So thanks, Mighty Dave. Nothing like hey, come in, take the thing that you love, and then we'll break it down very succinctly about why it doesn't quite work. But anyways, in our 5e campaign, Bob, when he raged, not only did he get 50% damage reduction, but I gave him damn adage, which was
damn adage,
which was advantage, but on his damage rolls. So
cool.
So instead of rolling a D10 plus his damage, he would roll 2D10, take highest with his damage rolls.
That was such a cool mechanic.
because like barbarians shouldn't be able to roll a 1. How much damage did you do? 6. No, that should just never be an option, right?
I think damn advantage or whatever we were calling it was so cool.
Damn advantage.
Yeah, it was so cool.
London says, don't use rage as a binary, but raging 1, raging 2, let them play with it as a resource. Yeah, I mean, London, you're obviously...
That's interesting. Yeah,
no, I mean, London, you're obviously saying all that, you're saying all the right things. We're talking about resources, we're talking about scaling, interacting with them at different points around the game. I'm all for that. I mean, I think
but that also makes the when you're talking about like this one-trick pony, then you get these things to flavorly play within your class.
Right.
How do I want to go this turn or that turn?
And Melvin's like, I like the idea that your rage bonus damage doubles if you get crit. That way the AC penalty doesn't feel so bad. And I agree. Like it was an element there of perverse incentive, but it almost makes you excited to have your AC be lower. You know, like you're like, Derek, is there a way I can lower my AC further? Because like I want to get crit because I have all these hit points, all this temporary hit points, but then my rage bonus damage, so I'm going to do a shitload of damage. And it's like that. It creates, I think, a very interesting play pattern that we don't get with the Barbarian today. Great Role Playing Debbie says, Derek ruins everything, the YouTube channel. The Dungeon Fighter MMO's Berserker played like how I thought Barbarians should play, sacrificing health for damage while getting temporary HP. That's right. Yeah, that sounds sweet. Yeah, I agree. Lockfin says, and I completely agree with what Lockfin says here, Barbarian does have value as a class that's simple to play. Overcomplicating it takes away from that utility.
Which is why I played it my first time.
Correct. And
easy to go.
I don't think that's wrong. That being said,
absolutely right.
One of the problems I have with role-playing games is people are buying these systems, they're buying these expensive books, they're taking the time to learn these games, and it's great. But so often the game, the rules presentation, the way the books are written and structured is designed for that new player. But we've been playing these games for 3 fucking years. Yeah. Like that's for the long haul. Like, please think about the fact that people are going to be playing this game for the next 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. I'm okay with classes necessarily being simple, but there's better ways to do it than just saying this class is kind of simple and boring and doesn't quite work right as well as it should. So when are we publishing Barbarians Plus? What does that mean?
It means when you talk about these new things, reworks, the Barbarians Plus edition. I said August 22nd.
August 22nd, obviously, of course.
That battle cry issue.
A Barbarian at 1 hit point should be stronger and nastier than one at full health. I love that idea.
That sounds sweet. I'm down to my last straw. You don't want to mess with me. My back's against the wall. type of thing. You know, don't want to don't back me up against the wall type thing.
Right. Yeah, I love it.
Yep.
All right. Well,
that is the Barbarian.
That is the Barbarian. Again, I think there's a lot of stuff to like about the class. I do think I know, Bob, we talked about some of the problems with it.
Yeah.
But I don't think
like it.
I don't think that makes it unplayable. To be clear,
I'm playing it tomorrow, and I'm gonna probably have a great time playing.
There are classes in Pathfinder 2 that I think are bad actively. Paizo agrees with me. They're like, oh, we're gonna rework the Alchemist and the Witch, and now there's like this thing that I'm hearing, which is that I think Mark Seifter said that the Witch was never play tested or finished, and the person that was working on it quit the company. And
I heard that. I don't know if that's true.
I don't know if that's true or not either. But
that was a thing going around. I don't know if it's been verified.
Anyways, my point is, a lot of the classes I have a problem with, Oracle, Witch, Alchemist, are classes that are going to get rebuilt or at least looked at closely in Pathfinder. Barbarian was never a class that I said, it was never a class that had problems. It just, I felt like I gave it a C because I was like, it's okay. It's not like this really interesting and compelling class. And I feel like there was a missed opportunity there, because if the class is going to be the big bad damage dealing class, let it be the big bad damage dealing class. And instead it's not really that. And I think, Bob, like, there's probably a lot of people out there who are like, hey, I'm going to be the Barbarian. And then they go and they play and they just watch the fighter out damage them while not while not going down as often as them either. And they're kind of like, what's going on right now? Like, I thought I was supposed to be the big bad badass, right? And I don't feel like that.
What was the Blood Rager again in PF1? I thought I played that for like a couple.
You did.
Things.
We played PF1 for a few weeks. And
Sajran was talking about like some way to build a Blood Rager from PF1 would be good.
The Blood Rager is like a barbarian sorcerer.
Yeah. I thought that was like a really cool idea.
I don't know why people are obsessed with hair and witches. I'm not very proficient in witch lore, but like I've seen the craft.
My hair back and forth. My hair back and forth.
I don't ever recall, like, the only person I remember who had a hair weapon was from Mortal Kombat. The one lady who's.
I was thinking Medusa from Inhumans.
It's like it's just so weird. I don't understand what living hair has to do with the witch. It must. You know what it is? It's probably some super obscure Eastern European myth. And
I thought you were going with like an anime.
No. It's definitely got to be some sort of obscure occultic thing that Paizo Publishing loves. Anyways, it's just very strange. John, have you ever done a Pathfinder 2 class tier list video, Derek? Yes, John, we did. We did 3 of them, one for at low level, one for at mid levels, and one for at high levels. If you go and you look at our backlog of videos in our live tab, we don't actually make that many videos anymore. We make a lot of live videos. So you got to go in YouTube. You got to go over to the live tab, and you'll see all of our videos on demand. Thousands of hours of live.
Some people were like, hey, they don't release videos anymore. We actually do, and just they're not under the videos.
I know.
We got to kind of screwed us over.
We got to figure that out. We got to like publish videos more often just to get us so we don't look like the channel's dead. Anyways, but John, we did a class tier review for low level, mid level, and high level, because we felt like some class, like for example, the Alchemist, I think is shit at low level, but I actually think it's actually pretty decent at high level. So some of the utility of the classes changes as you go through the tiers of the level. Blood Rager is fucking awesome, and it should be a Barbarian instinct or class archetype. It just needs to make Mac cast a spell or rage action. Yes, Lockfin, that is such an easy fix, and that is perfect. Just like the way that they made an exception for Seek with the concentration problem. You just make cast a spell, able to cast it, and then you let your rage damage add to the spell damage, and that would be awesome. That would be awesome. Let's see. It was one of Great Role Playing. Debbie talked about the hair. Says it was one of those biggest things from the Pathfinder 1 class. Everyone loved it. It was OP, but not in numbers. The hair, just in utility. Yeah, it probably like gave you an extra hand, and people were probably like dual wielding great swords or something. It's always something like that with Pathfinder 1. Do edited versions of the live streams, and by edited I mean just cut off the countdown and then nothing else. Yeah, but it's like.
We talked about it. We are going to be doing stuff like that. We'll be clipping some of our videos.
Yeah, exactly. We should, and it's just, I said, I'm already doing this, 5, 6, 7 hours a week on top of everything else I do, and then it's like, how much time? Then I got to go back, and it's like, it's a lot of work,
I get it.
to rewatch the thing that you just did, and then try to find like. I would say this.
We are gonna probably have some guys.
I would say this. At some point, we have an awesome patron army who comes in and watches a lot of our videos in VOD. And I've said this before, I'll say it again, or just you. Maybe you're just a subscriber. If you think a particular segment that we talked about is really cool, really interesting, very valuable,
mind-blowing,
and you think it's maybe 5 minutes long, 3 minutes long, 10 minutes long, 15 minutes, send me the if you're a member of the Patreon, go to KLC content chat, tag me or tag KLC and say, hey, Derek, I just watched that video. I thought the segment from 1413 to 2117 was really, really awesome and would make a good clip. And I'll probably be like, here's a hero point. Here's some silver tickets once we start doing silver tickets. Mm-hmm. Cool. And I'll make that into a video, and it's almost like you get to decide what content we make for the channel. I watch for free, man, and I do editing for fun. Well, that is insane. ICANN says, I think the rules lawyer does something like that. Okay, well,
a lot of people do that.
Well, Ronald is a very smart man, so that doesn't surprise me. Yeah, exactly, Orpheus. It's a ton of editing, and I'll be honest with you, Orpheus. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a great editor. It takes me a long time. I'm not like a whiz at it. I'm kind of I don't know. It takes me a long time. Like, I can get on here, I can live stream, and it's great, and I get to talk with you all. But when I'm just sitting there editing a video, I just don't feel that same excitement and passion. So editing is just not my jam, Yeah. All right. Well, we are going to wrap it up here. So Barbarian took a little longer than Rogue, but that makes sense. We had some fun conversations with everybody. And again, thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel. You definitely allow us to continue to do this over and over and over again. If you're interested in these kind of conversations, we do have a Patreon. If you want to support us, it allows you access to our private Discord. We have over 300 members who are very active and engaged, not just in Pathfinder 2, but in RPGs as a hobby. You will probably learn more about role-playing games from our Discord, not from me, but from our Discord.
Yeah.
Than I think anywhere else on the internet. I really do believe that. We have a very, very smart, well-balanced group. We have a lot of interesting conversations, a lot of respectful conversation, and we challenge each other, and we do a lot of other stuff. So I think it's a really great, but on top of that, you also get access to bonus videos, bonus contents. If you join at champion tier or higher here in the next few weeks, you could potentially enter our Northern Reaches campaign once that opens up to new players. There's just a lot of cool options for you. We have community games, which you can get in at any tier. We've got people playing, most of the people we have are GMs in our group. So the GM to player ratio,
the GM knowledge is like crazy in the Discord.
Is 1-to-1. Great role playing. Debbie says, take my money. I'm advocating for the investigator class stream. I would definitely have to have like Strat on if I did investigator.
You need someone, not me.
Yeah, not Bob. I need to have an expert. Thank you for that. Well, again, you guys have come out and shown tremendous support again for Pathfinder 2 and for Bob. So we'll definitely get Bob back on the stream. We'll definitely continue to do more of these Pathfinder 2 class talks. KC says, can we get strong to send them off? I think we will. All right, Bob.
I am strong.
All right. Thanks. Speaking of strong, by the way, I'm going to be launching a second channel. It's going to be called Gym Night. And it's going to basically be me getting my fat ass back into shape. And you know what? I'll probably post something
Jason
here.
B tipped $10.
Oh, Jason B with a long tip.
I'm not supposed to have favorites,
oh, gosh.
but this is by far my favorite PF2 channel. Unofficially endorsed. Join the Discord if you want to learn everything there is to know about this game, even if you're making it.
Thank you, Jason B, for the heartfelt endorsement of KOLC and our Patreon. We I'm not sure which patron you are because you must be using a pseudonym, but I appreciate that you're part of the group. Yes. Pat Fanning says, get in shape, hike the AT again. Yeah, well,
gosh.
That definitely got me in shape, Pat Fanning. The problem is I came home and I ate everything in sight, and then there was a global pandemic and I didn't go to the gym and I gained like 80 pounds. So anyways, I'm going to be starting a new channel called Gym Night, which is just going to be for mostly because we have, again, my community, the Knights Last Call community has a channel about health and fitness, and there's a lot of us, who are taking that seriously. It's not just about role playing; it's about a community of friends, and it's a community of advocates for each other, and that's what makes it really, really fun. So, anyways, I'm going to be starting that. I'll probably post a link on this page if you're in the Patreon, and I'll probably post a link when I start doing it. But I don't know what that format's going to be like. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because obviously my primary focus is here. But the main reason I'm doing it, Bob, is accountability.
Yep.
Right. Like if I'm making videos, if people are seeing me, it's like, hey, that's a little bit extra pressure. And I know historically that I have had problems, falling off the wagon, So anything I can do to kind of stay the course. So anyways, you're just trying to bait the gym girls for your TikTok. No, I don't even have a TikTok, John. Is that great role-playing Debbie says, is that actually Jason B or am I just stupid? The world may never know. The world may never know. KC is on along for the ride for gym night. Just joined the YMCA, and I just need to start going regularly. Absolutely, I'm sure Bob will have plenty of guest appearances from you on there, and we'll. He's got a nice
setup, so I'm gonna check it out.
Absolutely. So, anyways, look forward to that. Barbarian seemed an appropriate time to talk about it. We'll definitely do this again. We'll probably do another one this month about the classes, and we don't necessarily just have to talk about the classes, but this was an idea that we had. Actually, Quark gave us this idea, which was just do a stream about each class. And I thought it was really, really good. But it's not going to be necessarily like the, once a week, every week, locked in for all times. And of course, we're going to be doing Root here shortly. And Northern Reaches Season 2 is going to be launching here any day now. So a lot of exciting things coming for our patrons and for you, our viewers. So hopefully you stay tuned and enjoy what we have to offer.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Bob. Any final thoughts before I send this out?
Nope. Just like I said, I better see some deer barbarians in Northern Reaches.
That sounds good. All right, everybody. Well, then, on behalf of Bob and myself, and of course the wonderful members of the Knights of Last Call community, I want to say good night, and we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Bye, everybody. Peace.